But queen d3 is mate, and yet black has not made a move.
Queen d3 is mate on the board, and black has no connection issues. We can see he has a stable connection, so that's...
He doesn't see checkmate in one?
Is he? I think he's calculating knight h2 and deciding whether or not he can get away with winning the bishop and just not realizing he is mate on the board.
That is unbelievable if he doesn't play checkmate in one, because he's played such a good event thus far that if he doesn't see mate in one, that's crazy. But let's see. So Mitkov's winning. We saw that.
He doesn't see it. Oh, my gosh.
No way. Okay, he's still completely winning.
He just sat on the position, and he wins by resignation anyway. But can we... can we just say that I love the way you first observe the game. I'm not sure what's wrong with Kleinbeer here, but he has mate in one and he hasn't moved for about a minute and a half. That's hilarious. The games are going, Robert. So so you and I have work to do. Let's get a move on. You ready?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think which game to start with. So it looks like we have the Bras versus Minnesota Blizzard. So
just opened up Robin Van Kampen's game. Obviously, we have Mitkov versus Jordan Van Forest. I'm going to get all four opens just so the fans know who they might go follow. Michael Kleinman is playing against Mauricio Flores. And then finally, we have the one and only, the Tang Train, playing here for the Blizzard. So pick your poison, Robert. We can go anywhere.
Well, why don't we start with the Robin Van Kampen game, because Thomas Beardson just played the move G4 very early in this one. So clearly he's he's in for a fight. He doesn't care that Robin Van Kampen's the higher-rated player. He says, I'm going to go G4. So if your knight ever goes to F6, I'm going to play G5 with a quick tempo, gain more space on the king side, and unleash a vicious kingside attack. So Van Kampen responds with A6. So we have a sort of, well, it started off as a Taimana, but now we're in a Khan type of structure over here. And the big question, Danny, is if G4 ends up being a strength in that you are one move quicker to an attack on the king side, or a terrible weakness. For example, if black can seize control over the F4 square, right? Because no pawn can kick a piece from that F4 square. So, for instance, if, let's say, a knight landed on F4, knight E7, G7 to G6 to F4, or to H4, maybe white will have some kingside problems as well.
Yeah, these are obviously, we're in for a super dynamic affair, so I agree with you. International Master Beardson not laying down against the much higher rated Robin Van Kampen. He's going to go for some sharp chess, but you highlighted well the positional dynamic that we're going to see go on here, everybody. Will white's pawn storm and really aggressive intentions outdo black's potential positional advantages of all the weaknesses on the dark squares that Robert highlighted? So, okay, that'll be a fun one. Let's move on to the game with Mitkov versus Jordan Van Forest. What do you see going down right now in this one?
Well, we also have a Sicilian here, and it started off with a Taimanov.
Almost looks similar, but not quite. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's similar except for the fact that white didn't do this early G4 stuff. And so white will probably play G4 at some point if he wants to really unleash the pawns on the king side. Moreover, the move Rook G3 will always be possible. But I generally think that in the long run, black is doing pretty well in these positions. If you're not getting mated quickly, which is a big if, and having the two bishops, having the ability to break in the center, also potentially if you can get this bishop away from B7, breaking with B4 on the queen side can also be quite annoying for white to deal with. But I think Mitkov is doing everything correctly right now. He's lining up bricks in the F file. He hasn't committed to anything yet. So, he hasn't gone G4 and then he can't take that move back. If white does go G4, black can always reroute that knight to D7 to F8. So I think Rook F8 was a good move to open up that square for the knight to be a nice defensive piece. And just wait for the moment that black plays either E5 or D5, because I think if I'm black, I'm considering, trying to break open that bishop on B7. But, of course, going E5 is very risky when the knight on F6 at some point might be captured and the F5 square for the white knight. So it's a very interesting strategic battle at the moment that's going to get tactical.
Shout out to Frat Boy, who subscribed to us on Twitch via Twitch Prime and was shouting out for the sub train. But let's I agree with you about your assessment of the Mitkov game, but I think you and I both have a little bit of a bias about these positions as black in the sense that if I'm going to attack white, if I'm going to attack as white, I tend to like being castled long and going for the more traditional attacks. I think this one is one that is, if played really well, white has gotten all the pieces on the right squares. This pawn on d3 is actually really useful despite the fact that it looks weak. It's not a target on c2 anymore. It supports e4, which can help white focus on the king side. And so I think this one is going to be an interesting one and a really big matchup because Mitkov going against Jordan Van Foreest. Mitkov's going to have to do well, I think, if the Blizzard are going to have a chance in this match today. So, so where to next? Where to next? Let's move on to Kleinman's game.
We got to go to Tang, right?
I was going to move on to Kleinman versus Foreest, but you're in charge, so let's go to the Tang game.
All right, we'll check out Tang first, then we'll go over to the Kleinman game. So Tang with the black pieces against Xiam Thavandaren, the hero of last week for the Chess Pros. I mean, the guy just dominated with 7 out of 8. And, well, you know, I think my bias from the other position seeped over here. I love bishops, Danny. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the 2 bishops. Now, what I don't like, considering these bishops, is look at the black pawn structure. I think that's good because look at the bishop on c1, look at the black pawn structure. That bishop on c1 does not have a particularly good square and certainly has no good diagonal to work with for the time being. So I think that I don't think white's in any real danger. For example, if white goes d5 and closes the center and then decides if I want to go for f4, I move my knight away from f3 and then play pawn f2 to f4, or try to play on the queen side with an eventual a5 move to open the a file. I think because white calls the shots that I prefer white, and not just because of 2 bishops. I like having the opportunity to initiate pawn breaks, whereas from black's perspective, it feels like you're a bit more defensive.
Okay. Well, also a dynamic one, so we'll see how this one plays out. Let's go to the one of this matchup that we haven't looked at yet, Kleinman versus Flores.
Sure. And Flores with the black pieces. His little avatar is actually the book that he wrote, so that's kind of funny. I think he's more of a coach and author now than he is a player. I haven't seen his name in a tournament in a while, but he has been playing in the Pro Chess League. And with the black pieces against Michael Kleinman, this is what I was talking about, where Montreal has these strong board 3s and 4s that match up pretty well against Minnesota. And so I think right now Kleinman's doing quite well because he's already putting pressure on the black queen side. I like the fact that from white's perspective, the black's king side's a little bit airy, right? Like at some point, I could see an attack getting underway with a move like bishop to h6, or my queen going to f4 and then over to h4 potentially. And so I think that I would start with the move maybe bishop d3, challenging the black queen side, or a move like taking on b5 or rook to c1, some move. I need to figure out the right exact move order, but something just to keep the queen side well defended, and then perhaps moving my queen over to f4 and starting a kingside attack. Okay.
Well, the Bras and the Blizzard are the first matchup to get underway, but there are going to be a lot of other games going here at the start of the Atlantic Division. So if you're just joining us, thanks for being here. Let's go back to the top board where we've got Robin van Kampen, not making his Pro Chess League debut, but hasn't played as many weeks as maybe the Chess Bras would like him to, and so he's looking to turn that around here. He's already got d5, which is such a need positionally for black in these Taimanov Sicilian structures that I'm already starting to like how this opening went for black, especially when I see that, as you said, Robert, white committed the open kingside and now has apparently castled kingside. Something about this position I just don't buy the potential of this pawn storm here for white.
Yeah, and you have to love, like you said, the black center with that pawn on d5, very well defended with e6, c6 is a solid setup there. And the question becomes, is white eventually going to play from move like f5 and trying to break open the king side? But I just don't see how it's possible. Like even if you go f5, black at some point can probably go f6 to stop your pawn from going there. Not to mention playing the move f5 further cedes control over the center to black, because now black has control over the e5 square as well. So,
but how do you balance this, right? I think the other plan for white is a positional one at times. I'm not sure it's actually okay. He goes all in for the aggressive attack, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see Van Kampen do this thing you just recommended with f6. Do that thing. But the other idea for white positionally would have been a move like knight a4, where you try to get the dark squares if you could fight over there. But I guess white decides that that's just not going to be what he wants here, and he's going to be all in on the king side.
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned, though, from black's perspective, is how do you stop the move f6? Because what you essentially want to do is keep d5 protected and stop f6, but it's hard to do both at the same time.
Right, because if you play f6, white's going to take e6.
Allows white the capture on e6 and then try to capture on d5. So I think here's the moment where RVK should sit and think and really be careful, because you definitely don't want to allow the move f6 to come when you're not ready for it, and the bishop will go to h6 and the rook will have the open f file. And he did indeed play f6, so maybe he is in time to get away
one of the
with
things
it.
he might have on f takes e6 is an intermezzo. Is there some move like, okay, one idea is to take e4, another idea is to play d4, only because that e6 pawn isn't going anywhere, right? So things like d4, knight a4, bishop a7, if black can re-gobble that pawn on e6, then he will have achieved exactly what we talked about, stopping white's attack. And look at these dark squares. They're calling your name, Robert. I know how you feel about dark squares, right? This knight's coming to g6.
I'm totally with you, but I'm concerned about white going g5 at some moment, right? Because black is a little bit underdeveloped for the time being. So if white is quick to start breaking open that king side, despite the fact that, yes, the pawn gets to d4, like you were saying, that black does have counterplay there for sure. And even g5 right now has to be considered from white. Just, really trying to blast open this position. And I'm not quite sure black is ready for it. So g5 now, if you take on f5, I could take on d5. So there's all these weird pawn tensions going on. And I feel like white actually should be favored. G5 was indeed played.
I don't buy it. I don't think that white's attack is really as dangerous as it looks, but it'll be fun for us to argue about this one for the next 15 minutes. Let's move on to the game between Mitkov and Jordan Van Forest. The board 2 for the Chess Bras. Under pressure. Wow, take a look at this position where Mitkov has indeed broken through. And I guess that's what I was sort of saying, Robert, when I said that I think you and I generally look at these positions, and I agree. I tend to favor black. I love my bishop pair. I love the potential of opening up that bishop on b7, and I'm never as nervous when someone's launching a kingside pawn storm when their king is sitting right there. That said, I mean, there are guys like Mitkov. One of the strongest grandmasters who played these types of attacks against the Sicilians was Ivan Sokolov, right, when he was at the top of his career. And this kind of position can be really dangerous. Josh Friedel, an American grandmaster, to me, comes to mind as someone who played this type of attack against the Shevin-Ingen structure in the Sicilian, which is this e6, d6. So, I don't know. We'll see where black made a mistake here, but this is looking super dangerous. Bishop d4? Well, how is black defending this position?
I'll tell you where black made a mistake. I think the move g6 was particularly opening for white, because by going g6, when white plays f5, now white can capture on either diagonal, taking on e6 or taking on g6. If your pawn had remained on g7, you can always meet the move f5 with e5 and not worry about pawn takes g6 and knight jumping into f5. So by giving white that second option to capture, that allowed this knight to eventually find its way to f5, from where it's wreaking havoc on the black camp. So
that's a great point. I'm showing that on the analysis board right now, everybody, as you can see, that in this g6 line after f5, e5 wasn't a great idea for black, because now white would have taken g6, happily sacrificed this piece on d4 temporarily, as probably just about anything is winning here for white. Taking h7 and then a move like rook takes f6 is pretty much lights out. So great point, Robert. And it is something that's good to note, that part of the reason white is so successful here is that black made weaknesses that white can target and pry open. And so anticipating this f5 move a little differently, I made the move queen a5, maybe, Robert, back on move 18 for black. Something else that kept this option of e5 open against f5. Right. Maybe something like that was due instead of g6, because I think Mitkov is in control here.
Well, this game emphasizes why I don't play the Sicilian as black, really, because I'm always worried about just getting crushed. And I always think a move like king h8 instead of, queen a5 looks decent. King h8, just like an extra precautionary measure to keep the king, out of the pin from the rook. But I don't know. I can't claim to be a Sicilian
You're not a
expert.
Sicilian expert. You just play one on Chess TV. That's what you're trying to say. So, well, either way, we can see that Mitkov, his pieces are on the prowl. Something nasty is going to happen over here. I'm not sure whether it's going to be on g6 or f6, but the king on g8 isn't going to be happy no matter what. So, all right, we'll keep our eyes on this one, one of the most exciting ones. But speaking of excitement, I want to start opening up the games for the next match that is underway, because so many of the fans here want to know as soon as those games get started. St. Louis and the Pittsburgh Pawnsgrabbers are underway. Board 1, of course, is what you see right here. Fabiano Caruana taken on International Master Bora. Board 2, we have, what do we have? We've got Fedoseev rocking the white pieces. No, he's rocking the black pieces against a Tuyasheti.
Yep.
Then we've got the one and only Little Peasant taking on Awonder Liang. That's a big matchup for the first round. The only real GM on GM action we have there, right? And then we've got...
Can we hang into this Alejandro game for a quick second here?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm right there.
Because can't black just go knight c5 here?
You'd like that, wouldn't you?
Well, you go a3, and I don't understand why you would go a3 because that weakens the b3 square. So that actually, in fact, invites knight c5 to be played.
Bueller, crickets. I got nothing. Yeah, knight c5 looks delicioso. Hit b3. You know, Alejandro sometimes plays moves kind of rapidly in these, relying on intuition and these structures because he's played these positions, I mean, so many times, and it's a double fianchetto, and sometimes you're just thinking, I am safe, I can maintain flexibility because it's not the sharpest thing. But then you play a3, and look at that, you're right, Awonder Liang missed it. Knight c5 was a move that had black just better because b3 is a problem, and neither side was looking for tactics, and Awonder Liang has missed it with the move queen e7.
Oh, well.
It's no wonder that Awonder missed that move. Just kidding. All right.
Oh, Danny, we
pun
got to
time.
go to that last board there between Forrest Chen and Shaba, because Shaba did his thing where he did kind of doesn't care who his opponent is and says, oh, this guy's 1900 or 2100 or whatever, and Shaba's position is absolutely terrible.
Classic Shaba. Shaba sometimes does that thing that he does where, yeah, he goes on tilt in regards to having a solid approach. Forrest Chen, I think, has some work to do to beat Shaba Daba Ding Dong, regardless of being in a better position. But what in the world is Shaba doing? I mean, is White picking between winning lines already? I'm looking at knight f5, and okay, he plays it. I was going to say, it was screaming at me why he was even waiting to fork the bishop on d6 and the pawn on g7. I have no idea. Okay, so now what?
G3, right? The
G3
knight has
looks
to go
delicious. I was thinking d6. That was my first thought, but
I like your idea, but I think by kicking the knight to g6 first, then you go d6.
Now there's no pawn g6 kicking my knight. That's your idea, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, very, very nice. Notice how I learned from Bobby Hess before he even said it. I'm learning, everybody. I'm getting better. All right, yeah, no, seriously, White is in complete control here. This is classic Shaba.
It's one of the worst openings I think I've ever seen.
This is an appropriate time to get our emoji spam going. I'm gonna throw out some Shaba blunders, some double question marks in the Twitch chat. Thanks everybody who's tuning in. Thanks to all of our viewers, whether you're joining us at Chess TV, Twitch TV/Chess. You're awesome. We love you, babe. And I say that in the non-sleazy car salesman way. We love you, babe. All right, where are we moving to?
Let's see. Where should we go here? We have so many options. We've 8 games underway. Where I guess we should look at Fabiano Caruana's game. We haven't, we kind of zoomed over that.
Indeed, we did.
He is playing Want to Lose, who doesn't appear to want to lose in this game because the position looks just fine for Safal Bora, international master for the
Pittsburgh Pawnsgrabbers. Yeah, he doesn't want to lose, at least not yet. That's a weird name. How do you justify a username I want to lose? Like, where are you going with that? Right?
I don't know. I kind of like it, though.
Okay. Psychology.
It psychs your opponent out, right? They think you're trying to lose, and in fact, you're just trying to make good moves.
Okay, whatever. Anyway, so this is just a very tame-looking position, but one where you start to favor Caruana just because of his name and his rating and the fact that it's a very equal position. Black has established a decent space advantage on the king side, but without minor pieces, be wary of space becoming weakness, right? Because you're not really threatening to push these pawns aggressively and blow open the white king, everybody, when you don't have knights, you don't have pieces to kind of hop in and fill the attacking squares. So I agree with you. I still think Caruana will probably win this game, but I agree with you that I want to lose, doesn't want to lose at this point. Maybe he's even thinking about f4, which is sometimes a common way you meet this space advantage, especially if you played f4 and black trades it. We really like taking on g7 here for white.
Right, yeah, that opening that diagonal could be very good for white, although that bishop on h3 is it's kind of pesky. It keeps the rook from the f file if, say, that ever opens up, with black can indeed go f4. So it's an interesting position for sure.
Okay. Well, we'll come back to it. Let's go check on Fedoseev. You said before this Atlantic division got started that of all the top players, playing for St. Louis. Fedoseev has sort of underperformed, but let's also note that he's a free agent playing for the St. Louis Archbishops, one of the cool things that the league allows. And given that he's from Russia, I'm pretty sure he's playing from Russia every week, which I don't know what time it is in Moscow right now, but I'm going to guess Vladimir Putin went to bed like 4 hours ago. And I don't know what time, but I mean, seriously, Fedoseev has his work cut out for him in regards to his energy level during these matches.
Yeah, it's past 2 a.m. And I actually read the other day that they had a huge snowstorm in Moscow. Yeah. And it was like one of the biggest in a long time that they actually closed things down. Because usually they just say, snow, who cares? They buckle up, they do everything they normally do, despite the fact that the ground is frozen. But he's in it to win it. He's playing well with the black pieces, and now he can even consider going after this pawn on d5. So knight takes d5.
Let's talk about that in a second, because I tend to eat plants. Just shouted at us at the Twitch chat that Mitkov is getting ready to clean up Jordan Van Forest. So let's head over there, because we said beforehand, or I said as this round started, Mitkov will need to score well today if the Blizzard are going to pull the upset and beat the Chess Bras.
Oh my lord!
And he is on the way to do that. Everybody, you see our stats coming in. Had the Bras favored at 55%. But Mitkov is doing work right now, helping the Blizzard pull that upset.
Yeah, that is impressive, because right now he's throwing a queen e6 check. The bishop on f8 is hanging. The pawn on g6 is hanging. The pawn on h5 is hanging. I mean, everything is going to fall down for Jordan Van Forest. And king h7 doesn't actually stop anything, because for starters, you can take bishop on f8.
I mean, at this point, White's already up the exchange. You could take f8. Yep. You could play rook f7. This is literally picking your flavor, which is it's always nice when you're picking flavors if you're choosing between raspberry and strawberry, because they're both delicious, and that's kind of what he's choosing between right now. Rook f7, rook takes f8. So do we stay here and watch Mitkov clean up, or do we go to another game? Trying to keep our eyes on the chat. Appreciate everybody here who's letting us know. Look at that. I'm glad we went nowhere. Rook takes g6. The fanciest, schmanciest way to end this one. It's forced mate. If king takes g6, we have queen to f5 check. The king moves to
h6.
h6. Move. Queen takes f8, comes with check. And I guess I quickly thought that this was already mate, but I'm sure there's a mate here somewhere. Check. Okay, he just resigns, and we'll take it. We'll take it.
Yeah, and you gave Mitkov the confidence he needed, because he's on pace here for probably game of the week. That's a pretty sweet game.
A pretty delicious game, I got to agree. After rook takes, here's how the game actually finished, everybody. It actually went that line that I was showing, and Van Forest simply threw in the towel here. So with that big win, our focus has to be on whether Tang can also get a win in the first round here for the Blizzard. He's under some pressure here, though. This is like the opposite of the Mitkov game, where Tang is currently facing some heated noise from the dynamic duo. Batman and Robin are poking at the G7 square. So what do we got here?
Yeah, and actually the knight on e6 is stuck protecting the pawn on g7, which leads me to say, how can I distract this knight? Now d5, I can't go. You just capture it. What about bishop f4, threatening rook takes e6, threatening discoveries in that queen on c7? So bishop f4 to me sticks out as a very nice looking move to try to kind of discombobulate the black forces. And after bishop f4, black would love to go queen c6, trying to mate white down on h1, but knight e7 check means that black is not in time to try to checkmate white. Yeah,
so he's taking a think here, which that's the one thing you always worry about if someone's playing Tang, is we know exactly how fast the young man from Minnesota is, and if he doesn't find the right way to poke through here before he gets under time pressure, that might be the one practical shot that black needs. Okay, he finds bishop f4. Great move. As Robert said, it overloads the knight on e6, everybody, because that knight simply can't take f4 without mate, and you can't move the queen off the 7th rank due to moves like rook takes e6 and Bob's your uncle. So what does Tang find here? This looks like a huge problem. Robert?
Yeah, he looks like he's in big trouble. I'm trying to figure out if there's any way for him to be okay here, but it doesn't look like it.
Yeah.
It looks like everything's kind of crashing through. And maybe he has to move his queen out of the way, probably, because otherwise rook takes d6 hits the queen on c7. But that's trouble. So Mitkov won, as we noted. So that's a good start for Minnesota. But this would be a great kind of comeback here for the chess bras, and Xian is named.
Needed one, yeah.
And should we stay in this match? It seems another match just got underway, but should we stay here because these games are kind of heating up?
These games are really exciting. We will at least let the fans know the other matchups that have gotten underway here. The one just getting underway is between the Windmills and the Miami Champions. So let's bring up some of those games. First, we have Mr. Aaron Grabinski taking on Yuneski Quesada, as you said. Quesada is a great player, great at rapid chess, needs to perform well today for the champions to have a chance. Joshua Colas taking on Iturizaga, one of my favorite names to read because Iturizaga just rolls off the tongue. Then we've got Laquang Liem taking on Nicholas Rosenthal. Obviously, Rosenthal just still licking his wounds for crushing my fantasy team hopes a couple weeks ago. And then finally, we've got the last game I'm looking for in this matchup is actually not quite underway.
Tomasz Banush versus Brian Tillis. That's Shrilla versus Banksu.
And it's is it underway?
Maybe it's hiding. But I mean, I'm telling you, Danny, the bottom two boards, the fact that Miami put out a couple of masters and don't have international masters on those boards is really going to come to hurt them. And I think we're going to see that play out already in both the games between Laquang Liem and with Banush playing against.
Well, let's talk about this one that we're on right here. Laquang Liem, obviously the heavy favorite, north of 2,700 there. That's pretty good. But this is a weird position right now. Did Rosenthal just give up the pawn on d4 because he's down a pawn and there's tactics on the diagonal, the g2 diagonal a8. But what do you see here?
Well, I think he blundered a pawn. I don't think he intended for this to happen. But yeah, like you said, there are some tactics. But if you take on c4 now, the knight can capture over there on d4. But once black recaptures on this d4 square with the bishop, now f2 is hanging all of a sudden with check, which means that you can take on a8. Black will go bishop takes f2 check. And at the very least, black is ending up a pawn in the position. However, the good news for white is that you've gotten, for that pawn, black has to give up the dark square bishop, which protects the king side. I still think this is tremendous for black, and for sure, Laquang should go for it. But at least white has some pros for the loss of a pawn.
All right, well, let's go back to the chess bra matchup. We've got some action heating up here, especially on the board one, as time pressure is setting in. Robin van Kampen is down the exchange, but maybe getting frisky on the long light square diagonal. I'm not sure who I like here. I initially like white's rooks, but I got 99 problems, and half of them are on this diagonal here. So what does he do here? Yeah, here he goes with d4. This is going to get nasty.
I was thinking king g1 was a good starting point because that way you get the king off the diagonal and you can decide later where to move the queen. Mm-hmm. So now the question is, can white go make a move like queen g4? The idea behind queen g4 is you're hitting the queen on d7, right? Your threat is rook f8 check, opening up the queens to attack one another. However, black looks to play queen c6 in response with threatening mate. But the queen on g4 is a great defensive piece because not only does it lead an attack, it defends the g2 square. And so after queen c6, rook e7 may be possible. Say, you know what, go for queen h1 check. My king always has the f2 square to escape to, and then e1 to escape to after that. So I think actually this plan with queen g4 here is extremely strong for white.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And it actually looks like the question is what happened here? I mean, we said that Beardson wasn't playing with fear, but neither one of us was thrilled about his position. If we back up here on the analysis board, everybody, a few moves ago, well, I wasn't thrilled. I guess you were liking white's attack. I thought I was kind of calling the bluff, but he actually did the line you said, Robert. You get full credit. He played g5, took on d5 after ef5, and black just didn't quite have enough. I'm surprised that this position got so scary for black, but bishop g5. He took on e7, which of course leads to the fall of the f5 pawn. And okay, Robin went all in on the exchange sacrifice on g2 for some compensation. But since then, it's been some pretty good defense here by Beardson.
I don't know if... Okay, queen h3, same idea, and still now defends h2 as well as the g2 square. So still threatening rook f8 check. I would have preferred the queen on g4 just because you can launch a counterattack. But queen h3 still seems to at least leave white ahead. The rook f8 check is really hard to meet right now, and queen queen c6 can be met by a move, again, rook e7 probably. And in fact, after queen h1 check, that's the only check you're getting. So queen c6 was played, and I think rook f to rook fe5 then invites queen h1 check followed by rook f8 check. But even there, I think still the white king can run away. And rook e7 was played, Danny. So brave Beardson, he's really going for it.
Yeah. He might end up mating Van Kampen, but we got to stay right here because without a lot of time on the clock, well, at least we got to stay in this matchup because we've got Kleinman.
I was going to send this over to Shyam Thevandaran because he's actually close to winning. I think he is winning right now because Andrew Tang is about to flag and can't protect the g7 square from getting mated on. So it looks like Shyam is going to upset Andrew Tang and help the Chess Bras take the early lead.
That's a huge game for the Chess Bras, especially given that Mitkov went to work on Jordan Van Forest. So if this is the reverse result as far as an upset goes, big for the Chess Bras, who are again heavily favored in this matchup coming in.
And there are mates everywhere because like you were saying, Michael Kleinman either is mating or somehow black is escaping here, because that game is also fascinating with Kleinman having under 20 seconds left, but a queen on h7 and white to move, meaning that bishop h6 check, discover check. And now how in the world?
Yeah, there's no mate immediately. He's down 2 rooks. I was going to say, was the move bishop e2 possible? I guess the rook on e5 is guarding it. I wonder if we're about to see a settle on a draw.
Yeah, maybe black's move rook e5 was excellent, defending that h5 pawn.
Yeah, agreed.
And then with all these checks, it's going to fizzle out into a draw. But a great result for Kleinman, getting an upset on the top board. So back to...
Yeah, that's huge.
We got to go back to one of these games here. I mean, okay, Tang is completely lost. So let's ignore his game. Let's go over to Robin Van Kampen versus Beardson. And Beardson now is forcing a trade of queens, after which he has to be just easily winning, because once these queens go off, the rooks will double in the 7th rank, and then there will be all sorts of back rank checkmate ideas, not to mention the bishop on b7 needs to find a good home. And so Beardson leading the way for Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, this is... Well, it's required because at this point, with Tang falling, their chances of winning this first round, despite Mitkov's upset, go way down. But yeah, Beardson now with the queens on the board, you gotta love white. In fact, he mated him. Rook e8 check. He's got rook h4 check. The upset is on.
That is awesome.
That's a huge finish. He mated him.
That's the way to finish the match. And by the way, Danny, I have Beardson on my fantasy team, so I did a good job with that one.
Classy move by Bobby Hess. Okay, well, with that, what we've got is, let's go back to Tang's game, because even though it is one that is completely over, I guess we'll let it finish and maybe catch ourselves a highlight. Right, I don't know that we'll ever catch a stalemate on the board again like we did last week. Wow, I've been having nightmares and fantasies, which is a weird thing to have at the same time. But I've been having both nightmares and fantasies about that stalemate that Eric Rosen pulled off. Okay, yeah, not happening for Tang. He throws in the towel, which means round 1 is, still goes to the Blizzard, but not nearly as big as they would like. If Tang had taken care of business, you'd be looking at a 3.5 first round for the Blizzard. As it stands, they will take a 1-game lead into the next. Let's move on to Fabiano's game, which is heating up against somebody who apparently now does want to lose.
So we love that username, and white now is trying to break through. And if black is not careful, right, that pawn, if it gets to c6, that c8 square is covered, right? That bishop on e6 is doing a great job of covering that square. So black really has to be cautious. Now, you can be cautious by actually maybe trying to unleash an attack. So the idea I was about to suggest is queen to b4. And if white goes c6, then maybe black has to move e3. So getting a counterattack down the f-file, threatening queen e1 check ideas. And so, I definitely don't want to take on c5, that's for sure. Because taking on c5, queen c3 check, forcing the queen to g7, and then taking queen takes c5, at least gives white some great compensation. So I think queen b4, as Fabiano just played,
it's a nice move.
He's threatening e3 and taking on c5 now. And importantly, this queen on c2 has no check. If that queen could give a check right now, black would actually be checkmated. So important to keep that in the back of our minds.
Well, and this is usually where train wrecks happen. You get all caught up in the tension on the c-file. You forget that things like queen e1 check are coming, and or things like e3 first, followed by queen e1 check. So this is going to be a little scary here for Bora. with only 2 minutes. Okay, he plays c6, so he says it's not an issue, but Fabiano says, I think it is. One of the key things here is that if f takes, queen e1 check, king g2, no, black can't take. No, queen f1 is just mate. Shake and bake. Okay, yeah, so e3 is a problem.
E3 certainly is a problem. And also, black is able to, I'm not sure about this. I think black is able to trade queens if you make a move like f4, because then black goes queen e1 check. The king has to go to g2, and the queen d2 check forces the swapping of queens. But what happens there, right? Because white can, after queen takes d2, pawn takes d2, bishop g4, and there's still a protected passed pawn on c6. So I guess, oh, I see what happened. Okay, that's really good for black. And the reason why, this is actually very difficult to foresee, is once queen e1 check, king g2, queen d2 check, right? We trade queens on d2, and then the bishop is forced to g4, after which black must play rook f7 to e7, cutting the white king off and saying the only way your king will come to the e-file is if you go c7 and give me that passed pawn. So I think that is a very critical thing that Fabiano has to spot here, that, cutting off that king, cutting off the pawn from going to c7, and thus leaving that passed pawn on d2. So very difficult to foresee, but Fabiano is very strong and has enough time to see it. So
yeah, he's got 6 minutes and 45 seconds, obviously in a big spot, as he always is on board 1 for St. Louis. They need him to do well. They also need board 2 to do well. Let's keep our... Okay, Fabiano looks like he's found exactly the line you said. He plays rook e8 immediately, which also works.
I guess that's strong.
Yeah, he's saying if c7, I can just play rook c8.
Exactly.
And the game's over. He just picks up the pawn.
So, in fact, he gains himself an important tempo, because now if king f2, rook e1, saying if you don't push your c pawn, I'm just going to get a queen unopposed.
Right, but if c7, rook to c1, it looks like it's just winning for black.
Yep, exactly.
Well, so unfortunately for Pittsburgh, it looks like Fabiano's going to be the one going pawn grabbing here. And we'll keep our eye on that. But Fedoseev, despite the criticism that we've given him for not being as good as his free agent acquisition for St. Louis needs to be, he did take care of Shetty on board 2. But this has been a really stellar technique by Fabiano, honestly, on board 1 here, and he will probably go pawn grabbing to win the game. What about board 3? Alejandro versus Awonder Liang. The stats favored St. Louis big time coming in here, Robert, but if one man is going to change that, it's going to be a wonder that it's Awonder Liang.
Well, Danny, here Awonder is down a pawn, if my math serves me well, but this bishop on d5 very well may be worth that pawn sacrifice, because it covers the entire length of that long diagonal and is completely unopposed. So at first glance, I love that bishop, but this is one of those positions where if black is not quick, that extra pawn will come in handy. For example, let's say I get 2 moves in a row for white, queen f1 and f3. Now I'm threatening to go e4 and try to, your bishop and blunt it on that diagonal. So now I don't like the move rook c1, because it invites a very logical move from black, queen g6, getting my queen into the action, attacking a knight on d3, threatening queen e4. And now I think the move knight e1 might have to be played, and that's an ugly-looking backward move. So I think...
Well, plus does it even solve all of white's problems? If knight e1, queen e4, and we still got a whole lot of them on the light squares here.
I think then queen g2.
Okay, so knight e1, queen e4, queen g2, I guess you got enough tickle for now, but queen f5 is nice. It hits the queen and then takes away the h3 square. So anyway, I think we're in agreement that black has a ton of pressure here, and Ramirez is coming under fire from Liang.
Right.
Okay, well, is Fabiano cleaning up as we go back to the top board? He did manage to get that c-pawn, and the commentator's curse, as soon as I come to the board, Bora knows Danny's watching. It's time to resign. St. Louis jumps out, grabbing the first 2 games on boards 1 and 2. Awonder will have to win. What about the other person who was supposed to get a big win for the Pawn Grabbers? Whoa, what happened here? Shaba's turning things around just like we know he could. I'm about to say something inappropriate, Robert. Start talking before I do, please. Go ahead.
But what's interesting about this position, though, is it's actually very easy to see black making a big mistake, because there is this bishop on d5 hitting the pawn f7. White currently has 2 pawns. Wait, how many pawns? No, 1 pawn for the exchange, but they're passed pawns over there on the queen side. But it looks like what Shab is trying to do now is go rook b2 check, followed up with a rook b8 idea, and then take on b4, and then bishop to f8. Okay, everything is working well for black at this moment. I guess you can also take on g2, and he does that as soon as I say it. And yeah, Chaba got out of it, but that was a terrible opening that he would not.
It was terrible. Just so you know, kids. I mean, if there are any kids watching, it is not something you should be doing in regards to playing chess the way that Chaba did to start this game versus Forrest Chen. But Chen has some things to improve. Shout out to the Twitch chat, using our emotes, predicting wins and losses with 1-0 and 0-1. Teletubby, if that's a Teletubby reference in a weird, subtle way, that's my favorite thing. That's my favorite thing you ever did. Okay, Chaba's going to take care of business here, which is going to help Pittsburgh have a chance. That means this matchup is all going to come down to this game here, because if Awonder takes care of business, then despite Caruana and Fedosey winning, Pittsburgh got away with round 1 with a 2-2 tie.
Yeah, and again, it's Alejandro being the culprit because he just has been in bad form in the Pro Chess League. And we should not count him out in this one. It looks very dangerous with his pawn on g4 and the bishop on d5, just taking full control over this long diagonal. But that being said, there's no knockout blow, at least for the time being, because queen e4 will always be met by queen to g2. And he started with, there, as we see, queen to d3. Now it's an important choice. Does black go f5 here, which kind of makes certain that the black queen is not going to infiltrate,
right,
and was played, but permanently prevents white from going e4 himself. And so now the knight can go to g2 to f4, which makes me nervous. But after knight
Why do
g2,
you get nervous? Everybody gets nervous when they first put their knight on that spot. So,
well, the knight is going, to f4, but then bishop h6, Danny, and in fact, I don't see the knight coming to f4 anymore. So maybe Awonder's got this under control.
I think Awonder does. I think Alejandro has not had his best from the start of this game. He blundered out of the opening, as you and I spotted, even though Awonder didn't. But this is just a dominant position for black, right? I mean, the grip on the light squares just looks so nasty that it's even from a practical perspective, if white's not technically losing, it seems like a much harder position to be white here than black.
Right, I agree. And so, by the way, the Montclair Sopranos and the Buenos Aires Krakens are underway, and we haven't really given the Webster versus Miami matchup a look in a long while as well. And for those I see you asking, why does Webster have a negative 0.5? They made a last-second substitution. They submitted a lineup and then changed it, and thus you receive a penalty for that.
Yeah, and I'm opening up the games between the Krakens and the the Krakens and
the Sopranos.
The Sopranos, as we see that Charbonneau and Bartel versus Pichot, and then we've got, what else we got? I'm looking for other games.
We have Lenderman versus Bleat. And who else do we have? I don't even see the rest of them. Oh, there's Pascal.
I see Pascal.
Whoa.
I don't see Lenderman's game yet, but okay.
Lenderman is Alex username.
Yeah, let's focus on, well, where do we want to go? You said we haven't given a lot of love to the matchup going on between the Windmills and the Champions. I spotted this game here. Moving over to the game here between Colas and Eduardo Iturrizaga. This is an obscure bishop position that's probably a lot trickier than it looks for white. Black really has the potential for a mating net on the dark squares.
Yeah, Black's mating attack possibilities is up a pawn. And so move eventually, maybe not yet. You have to be careful before making a move like a5, because then the b5 pawn can become a target. But essentially, okay, bishop c5 is probably just stronger, because now you're taking on a3 without any repercussions. And in fact, the white queen can't even attack the pawn on g5 to distract the black pieces. So bishop c5 is a great move, picking up a second pawn. And once that pawn goes, that should be a pretty simple conversion task for Iturrizaga.
Okay, well, let's bring up Lenderman's game here. He is currently taking on Bleat. I love saying that. This is where we go into Bleat, deep. Oh, man. Well, Bleat is bleeping better here. He's bleeping on a roll.
Bleat makes him sound like a sheep, It's what sheep do. So Bleat with the white pieces.
Sheep and a
he's
jeep.
Got a nice
Sorry, that was a dad joke.
What'd you say?
I said sheep and a jeep, but that's a dad joke.
I mean, he's got a nice centralization as white, but at the same time, I'm a little bit concerned that these knights are the knight in d4 in particular can be met eventually with the move e5. So if I go f6, say kick this bishop away to h4, and then play bishop h6, pinning this pawn on f4 to the queen on d2, then there's the threat of e5 in the air coming after the f4 pawn. So I think that Letterman's just a much stronger player. And, with in this position, you can make some complications. And f6 might not even be a necessity. Queen d7 is probably just a safer idea. But I do like Letterman's chances, given that he is the significantly stronger player. Though I don't like queen d7 because it allows f5.
Okay. Let's check on Sergei Ehrenberg's game. Another, of course, big matchup, big player in the lineup for the Montclair Sopranos, taking on Perez here. What do you see in this position with, looks like... Black is already doing just fine here out of the opening, but the c6 pawn has me worried if I'm Ehrenberg.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up this game real quickly. What is Ehrenberg's username here?
Just Sergei_Ehrenberg. He's a real original cat. But yeah, no. So White has to figure out a way to get pressure against the c6 pawn, everybody, by putting a rook on the c file. The problem is right now this knight is kind of irritating in the sense that if White brings the bishop to b2, Black can put the knight on a4, immediately poking at it. If the bishop comes to d2, that's probably White's best. But I guess the knight will find safety, and then the question is how quickly can White get pressure on the c6 pawn. The advantage for Black, of course, you've got this bishop outside the pawn chain, which whenever you look at a structure like this, you're like, okay, happy day. That bishop is not just a big pawn behind the structure, but I don't know that it's really that big of a deal here for Black, that big of an advantage. The more I look at this position, the more I think White's doing okay, unless Sergei comes up with something kind of quickly here that I'm not seeing.
Yeah, no, I think it looks interesting that White has a nice control over the queen side, so that certainly favors Mr. Perez. And yeah, I think that Ehrenberg is the stronger player, so maybe that bodes well for him. And he has a lot of familiarity with the structure, but I just don't like the Black position there. And
quickly going back over to the game between Little Peasant, that of course being Alejandro Ramirez, he somehow swindled himself a draw here. So that's a huge game here for Ramirez, given that he was worse pretty much out of the opening as White. But he got a draw, as we can see there on the board, by the analysis board above us. That's the result. And then, of course, we've got the actual position. Where did it go wrong here? Because Awonder was just better here. I liked his position.
Yeah, I was very confused, and I'm like staring at it like, what just happened? Because it looked like Black was about to deliver mate, but unfortunately for Awonder, he let his opponent perpetual check him.
Force the king up.
Petition.
Yep.
Because both queens got into the action.
Looks like he missed bishop f8. Not sure at this point if it mattered because he already had allowed queen to c7 check. But that lack of pressure converted into a win is why you see St. Louis with a 2.5, 1.5 victory.
Well, even at the end of the game, Danny, I thought that Awonder could have played on by taking this pawn on h5, but it looks like he
was worried about, well, isn't queen h7 delicioso?
Well, no, I'm talking on move after this queen G3.
After queen f4 check.
Yeah, so queen f4 check, king h4, queen g3 check, and now taking on h5 to not get mated. So I think he could have played on there. It is a bit risky, of course, with your king over there in h5, but it's not like White's in any less danger with the king on the back rank and the queen and bishop staring it down. So missed opportunity for Awonder Liang for sure.
No, you're right. I'm looking at the position. I wonder if he just had a hallucination and just missed that he could take this pawn, because it seems like Black is totally winning.
Well, you got to take it after king h4, queen g3, because you take it immediately. Yeah. So maybe that was the confusion for him, is that he saw he couldn't take it immediately, but then forgot he could take it after those two moves are played. So, all right. Lequang Liam, he beat your boy Nicky Rosensalsa.
Oh, no surprise there. Nicky. Falling down on the job for me. But the Miami champions. Yeah, I was going to say the Miami champions did score first, as Iturrizaga eventually did win this Opscode Bishop. Really, really tricky position against
We have a little peasant in the chat actually saying in the twitch.tv/chess chat saying that bishop b4 was actually winning. Bishop f8 is bad. So he was critical of his own move, bishop to f8, it seems like. And that, it's good to see him in the chat with all the fans as well.
Showing that right now, he's saying that bishop to b4, guarding the knight. That's his idea, was winning.
Yeah, so in other words, leaving the possibility of bishop f8 checks for later and starting with b4. That's interesting, for sure.
Okay, yeah. Well, obviously, as far as the team standings go, he held a draw in a position that was really complex against Awonder, and we thought you were worse there, Mr. Ramirez. So St. Louis takes a 1-game lead after the first round of games there. Of course, we should probably stay with the Krakens and the Sopranos here, but where would you like to go?
Wow, Pascal Charbonneau got absolutely crushed by Leandro Crisa. So Grandmaster Crisa must have heard me talking badly about Buenos Aires. I do love Buenos Aires. My roommate is from Argentina. I say this every single week. And I still just, the performance has not been up to par. And turned it around real quick by absolutely demolishing Pascal Charbonneau. I mean, look at the ending position here with a knight on g2, a rook and queen on the g file, his bishop on h4 hanging. I mean, wow, what an ending.
Yeah, no, this is a crush. So that didn't go well there for Pascal. All right, where are the other games at? Let's check on Lenderman's game.
Yeah, so he's playing Jacques Bleat, and it looks like Lenderman is doing his thing. He's got like a positional stranglehold going on here. He can put a knight on c5, which attacks the a4 square. The e4 square can go to b3 if it wants, and the better pawn structure as well. He did, in fact, play knight to c5. And if you look at the pawn structure, White has his isolated pawn on e4 and a terrible rook on e3. In fact, bishop h6 is the next threat because that rook is trapped over there on e3. So knight d6 looks like a good move for White, hitting rook and bishop on b7. But after knight d6, bishop h6 actually picks up that rook over there on e3 with check, I might add. So Lenderman looking very good in this one.
Okay. What else we got? We've got Tom Bartel taking on Grandmaster Pichot. What's going on in this one?
Well, I see a huge central mass for Tom Bartel. I mean, look at these pawns. How many, is White up like 6 pawns in this game? White is up one pawn.
White's up enough pawns. That's the answer. He's up enough.
I mean, there's so many pawns, C4 and then the D pawns. And now White should just go probably either rook f to e1 or knight to e5 and just further take over the center. Black has no space. Black is down a pawn. Yes, Black has 2 bishops, but that's not nearly enough compensation given the fact that, there's no real active plan. And so c5 is also a good move, saying, all right, you can't move your b pawn, otherwise I'll go c6 and take even more space on the queen side. I think that Black is just lost at this point. I mean, knight e5 comes next, then eventually move c6 can be played, and look at that knight on c7. It's got nowhere to go either. Really tragic position.
Yeah, I don't know what happened here for the Grandmaster for the Krakens, but this is bad. This is real bad. In fact, there's like no moves for Black.
Yeah, it's looking pretty hideous position, honestly.
Yeah.
By the way, Unieski Quesada did beat Aaron Grabinski. There's a win for Miami. That's a nice result for them. 2-2 at least in the first round.
Yep. So they guarantee the 2-2 tie. We stay here on the matchup right now between the Krakens and the Sopranos, although the second round of games, of course, for the Blizzard and the Chess Bras are probably calling our name at this point as we bring them up. Let's do just that.
Yep. And which one should we start with? Should we start with Mr. Beardson?
Well, I looked at Van Kampen versus Mitkov. Van Kampen looking to rebound and got a much better position here against Mitkov. Still a lot of time left in this one. So, yeah, let's go to the game with Beardson, who is taking on – who is he taking on? We've got
Van Forest.
Jordan Van Forest, yep.
And I love Beardson's position, and he's making me even happier that I chose him as my board 4 in the fantasy chess competition. Because if you look at the position, White has double isolated pawns in the b file, an isolated pawn on e5, and Black has this lovely bishop on c6 and lovely rook on d7. Look at the White rooks. They're in the C file, but they're stopped in their tracks by a bishop on C6 that's protected by a pawn on B7. On the other hand, black has a rook on the D file that can just start venturing down the board, can go to D3, can go to D1. You can always start with a move like H6 or H5 or something like that for black to make sure you don't get back rank checkmated. And so, I mean, I don't see where white's going to get active play from. And on the other hand, black, like I said, can start venturing down with the rook. I would start with
there is
D3.
This knight on D6 that could happen.
But then what? You know, even if I let your knight to D6, I can just go rook E6, let's say, and kind of question you. What are you doing? You know, what's going on? So you just have to make luft for your king. So there's no knight takes B7 garbage that you know, gets you back rank. And I love black's position here. Beardson for the win.
Okay, well, that'll be huge if Beardson continues to have a great day for the Blizzard, who came in as the underdogs, obviously, against the Chess Bros. So we've looked quickly at Van Kampen's game. We've looked quickly at Beardson's game. Other games, we've got Mauricio Flores playing for the Chess Bros. Playing for the Blizzard.
Right.
What's going on in this one?
Let me pull that game up. Oh, there it is. Okay. Playing Hudinovic. Firstly, that's a great name by Shyam Thavandaren. Hudinovic. I like that a lot. And, okay, what's going on here? Flores with the two bishops. Black with the two knights. So I think you have to take this pawn on D6. Otherwise, it's just going to get protected. And queen C7 at some point could be an idea. So what's the pawn count? Currently, white's up 2. Yeah, white's up 2 pawns, but once D6 is captured, just 1. Though I love white's position. Up a pawn, 2 bishops. Granted, those knights are actually very strong, especially the one on 5. But it looks like if white is able to kind of coordinate his pieces well and play move like, let's say, rook to D2 to start with. But I just don't see actually how progress is made. That's what I'm struggling with.
Well, he's up a pawn, though. I mean, you've got the 2 bishops that are currently sort of stuck due to the knight and the pawns, but he is up a pawn as well. And it seems hard to believe white won't be able to figure this out. Yeah, you're right, though. I mean, even after rook d2, the queen comes back to c6. I don't see an immediate infiltration move for white, but it seems hard to believe that there isn't going to be an advantage here for white. Plays rook d2. By the way, after queen c6, there's actually a nice move with just bishop takes c5, right? Because if knight takes, there's rook d8 check.
Well, so if I take with the queen, then you force me into an endgame that I don't want to be in with.
Right.
Do I not want to be in that? Because the knight on c5
maybe you're okay. I mean, yeah, the knight on c5 is strong. You block the c4 pawn, but okay, yeah. I mean, I guess bishop takes c5 isn't just an immediate home run, but there are some tactics here. If white can figure out a way to punch this through, maybe. I mean, queen a7 is a move to consider because now bishop takes c5 becomes more of a real threat. So that's one idea.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Danny, it looks like Andrew Tang won his game extremely quickly by mating Michael Kleiman in like 25 moves.
Okay. Well, that's good for the Blizzard to keep keep the pressure on the Chess Bros. We'll see if we can find time to run over and take a quick look at that, everybody. But okay, what else do we have here?
Got a bunch of games still going. Well, Fabiano Caruana started his second round game. We have, that means Fedoseev, Alejandro Ramirez, all those people started their second round because they're on the same team. And should we stay with, I mean, I guess we should go back to the Chess Bros, the Sopranos, because their time situation is getting a bit lower.
Yep.
And
where to start? We've got Tom Bartel, who was up 1.5 million pawns. But that position has become a little weird, actually.
It's become super weird.
Yeah. Black is really totally back in this one. What happened there for white to lose that massive pawn storm?
Yeah, and all of a sudden, you know, white has 6 pawns. Wait, 6? I can't count. 5 pawns, but they're all isolated. In fact, there's double isolated D pawns. And in the current position, I mean, black is aiming to go after D5.
Yeah.
Although it's difficult for actually black to really retrieve the pawn because you're a little stuck. The knight on c6 is extremely strong. The other knight can eventually make its way to c3 to protect both b5 and d5. And so I don't know actually if black is able to make quite enough progress here to claim equality. I think white should still be quite a bit better. Yeah.
The fans in the Twitch chat, particularly Anton Squared Me, we love that guy, Dan. He just wishes he knew where your roommate was from.
Where what was from?
Your roommate.
My roommate is from Argentina, Buenos Aires.
No, it was a joke because you've said that many times. So.
Oh, gotcha.
Sorry.
I say it every time. I say it every time because if I don't say it, then the people from Argentina might get mad at me for trash talking the team. I've said it before.
I say my wife's from Greece every time so that the entire island doesn't get mad at me every time I talk about her. So, no, just kidding. But anyway, thanks everybody who's here. Just letting the chat know we are keeping our eye on you. Thanks Dan for keeping Robert in check with his roommate references. Tonky97, active title player over in the Chess TV chat. Lots of premium members just hanging out on a Wednesday afternoon. I wonder where everyone's jobs are. Maybe they'd have one if they weren't just hanging out with us on a Wednesday afternoon, but okay. Where to go, Robert?
Sorry, I was just kind of trash talking Anton Squared Me in the Twitch chat.
You said you don't like his gifts? He knows you're lying. Everybody loves his gifts. That's not even possible.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Fedoseyev's game against the person who's not into winning. Let's check out that game right here. What do we got? We've got if you watch those stats, everybody, obviously the big turnaround we've seen is something we have to point out, is that to start the day, the Montreal Chess Bras were favored 55% over about 33% of the Blizzard. But with the Blizzard's performance so far, things are moving the opposite direction, and they don't even have Sean Nagel playing today. They're not even finagling themselves a victory, just relying on the Beardsmen. And anyway, but okay, what's going on here? Fedoseev looks like he's about to do some positional stuff against Bora here. Going to Grindtown on the light squares. Is Bishop B5 coming? I like it.
Yeah, I think if you're Bora, you have to be very, very careful at this point, because if you're not careful and Bishop B5 was played, your move, Danny, and let's say the knight captures on b5, you see a great knight versus not a bad bishop on g7, but as in most endgames, the problem is the bishop can only stay on its own color. So after bishop takes b5, knight takes b5, let's say that rook moves from a8, actually eventually you can go knight a7 and bring that knight into c6, right? Just kind of transferring the knight to even further square up the board. So I really like White's position. I think this is where we're going to see what we say Grandmaster Fedoseev GM him. He's playing an IM. He's a better player.
He's Russian schoolboying him. That's the correct reference. Yeah.
There you go.
And I'm not dissing the chat at all, frat boy. I'm shouting out the chat. I love the chat. Anyway, all right. Well, yeah, I think this is going to be a light square issue for Bora. We still haven't checked on Caruana's games since he started. The second round, bringing that one up right now against Atulia Shetty. Let's check that out.
Okay, Caruana. Let's see what's going on here. Weird position. At first glance, I do not like Black's position at all. But on second glance, I still don't like Black's position.
What about third glance?
Third glance, let me wipe my glasses down. Yeah, I think Black is doing very poorly, and I was going to say this move d5. You just blast open the long diagonal, right? I see a pawn on g6, but I see a bishop not on g7. So I'm thinking to myself, all right, look at d5. Now you're kicking that bishop away. And very importantly, you're going to put your bishop and or queen on that long diagonal. Now, c4 from Black looks like it may cause some problems because you're attacking the queen on b3 and also the bishop on a3. But unfortunately for Black, after queen takes c4, well, your bishop on c6 is also hanging. So you can feel free to take that dark square bishop if White is capturing the light square bishop. So right now, I think that maybe Black's already busted because this long diagonal will be White's for the taking, not to mention that the pawn on c5 is a potential target, and the White has an enormous center going e4, e5, d6, if that's part of the plan as well. So I really like Fabiano's position.
Yeah, something went wrong here for Shetty. I'm not even sure he knows what it was, but let's see if Grandmaster Shabadaba can use his full nickname, the Ding Dong, to get a point here against Ramirez. I don't know where that went. Well, this Shabba Dabba Ding Dong. What's he got?
This
Holy
is a great match.
Shabba. What?
it's a great matchup because I like both of these players, but I think Shaba has the upper hand right now. Can we just take a moment and appreciate all the knights in the dark squares over here?
Just because it needs to be appreciated. I agree with you. Thank you for pointing that out.
Like, look at the B8 H2 diagonal. There's a queen on C7, right. Pawn 6, knight. Like, we're just playing checkers over there.
Yeah.
But back to the chess. I mean, look at the white position. At some point, you're going to put a knight on H5 if you'd like. Black doesn't really have active counterplay for the moment because, you know, a move like C4 immediately runs into just a simple response like bishop to E3 or a number of other options that look equally good. And so Ramirez has a weak D5 square. The H5 square is a knight's going to pop into. I don't know, Danny. I hate what Alejandro's doing. I think he's been really bad in the pro chess league thus far. And B4, I mean...
Yeah, he's going the wrong way. I think Ding Dong the Peasant is dead in just about 30 seconds. But let's go back to the exciting game that we don't want to miss finish. That, of course, being between Bartel and Pichot. Only a few seconds. Something crazy is about to happen here, and I don't want to miss it. That's why I'm here. I'm here for moments like this, Robert, in case you're wondering. What's going on?
Well, the knight on D6 is a phenomenal defender because it covers the B7 square. And look at this A pawn start rolling down the board. Rook B8 check to A8 should be played. And don't forget about it for now, but this pawn on G5 is actually a passed one. So
yeah, he's only got 4 seconds too. So, okay, after he gobbles E7, is this game not just over? Why didn't he take Rook takes E7? Rook takes E7, A2. Okay, so...
Yeah, I think, okay, that's a good move. 96
that's a nice
is coming.
Now he's got 96 check. He can move the bishop. Oh, he just forks and takes.
Yep, there it is.
And Rook's... Okay, but he's got the pawn. He's got to bring the bishop back to B1. And is there any way for Black to trick the bishop out? Looks like there isn't, and he's about to lose on time. He's going to bring the knight to D5 and then C3, but White should have enough if he just... Oh, but wait.
Wait, what was that? What was that? Go 96. You have to go 96 and go C7. Okay, or this move order.
Okay, play C7 first, now 96 check, and you get the knight back just in time to B3.
So this is a ridiculous...
Oh, he almost just lost on time right there with the 2-second increment.
G6. No, you gotta go G6.
Oh my God, is he about to blow this game?
Yes.
He's giving up the B3 square. What is he doing?
He's got C2, knight C2. Go knight C2, and then push your pawn. H6. Okay,
knight E4 check he's gonna get the knight back to F7 just in time, but it doesn't matter because G6 is coming. Okay, so Bartel did not blow the game.
He almost did, and he still has plenty of time, and he's gonna end up winning this. But that was a phenomenal display of how to almost lose.
Of bad technique. Phenomenal display of bad technique. My favorite kind of technique, actually, ironically. Okay, he just gets a queenie poo and does work here. So Bartel manages to take that, which puts the Sopranos in the driver's seat as far as that matchup goes, right? Well, I guess they were just tying the match right there. But given that they were favored heavy on the top boards, the way a lot of these matchups work, everybody, is to start, you've got the higher-rated players going against the low-rated players, so you have matchups where both sides who are better should take care of business. But as the matchup goes, and if you're more heavily favored on the top boards, you're more likely to pull away in the end. So for Bartel to get that game when he was actually not favored, that's a big and good start for the Sopranos. So where do you want to go, Robert?
Let's see. I guess we haven't checked on Mitkov in a while in that Minnesota.
Yeah, we've got Mitkov taking on Robin van Kampen. Obviously, that's
in another very weird position, Danny, because actually material is even. I didn't expect that. I was looking at the pieces and trying to figure it out. Material is even, but there's a problem on the G file for Black, right? That bishop on B2 is on a very nice square, and so Mitkov has to be very careful. That said, it's not like White's king is particularly safe either, right? Because the king's on H2, the pawn F3 is hanging at some point. If pawn takes G5, then rook takes F3, and both sides are just trying to checkmate the other. I would have to think that White is better here because the king is slightly safer. But Danny, I mean, with under 3 minutes on the clock for both sides, what color would you prefer to have here?
Sometimes you put me on the spot and my brain is blank. I like Black, I guess. And it's not just because Mitkov pulled probably the sexiest upset so far of the day, winning as white already. But the time pressure is a big problem here for white as well. He takes h6, but what's to stop us from just trading on g3 and then swinging the queen over to h5 and taking back on h6 with the queen?
Right.
I mean, you got to do that first, though. You can't play queen h5 first, everybody, because rook goes to h3. But
no, but then you take on h3. Your rook's on f3.
Duh. Yeah, so maybe queen h5 first is also just fine. Queen h5, then trade on g3 with check, and perhaps then gobble back on h6 with the queen.
And the one problem that black really has right now is, well, there's two big problems. One is that the rook on b7 is not very active, and two, in an endgame, white has this outside passed a pawn. So having the outside pawn is very good in an endgame because it's much harder to get to, especially for a king. So I would keep that in mind, though. For now, like you said, ideas of queen h5 check, take on g3, and take on h6 with the queen, keeping the long diagonal at least closed for the time being. That seems like Mitkov's best strategy.
Okay. All right, well, Mitkov is in a critical position here, but at least the Blizzard are playing well, really being led by the Beardsman, who has already, did he already win his game again?
No, Beardson drew against Van
Beardson
Forest.
drew, but Tang did quick work.
Yes, Tang was the one who went to town.
Right. Okay. c6. Interesting move. Not a bad one. He's trying to get this rook on b7 into the game, just as you said, Robert. And
wow, that's a sacrifice. Because white can just go h takes g7 here.
Yeah, and he's got a huge passed pawn on g7, which is protected by the bishop, everybody. So that's not just a gobbable pawn.
But rook f2 is hanging. And rook f2 is hanging technically a move ago, but I didn't mention it because rook takes f2 would have allowed
queen takes f2.
Some stuff on g7. Right? After taking on f2, rook takes g7 check.
Right.
There's some big problems with the fact that white now has a protected passed pawn once it goes to h7. And I didn't see how black would stop that pawn from advancing.
Yeah, I guess it was a line worth mentioning. You're right. I'm showing it now on the analysis board for the fans. But indeed, black probably runs out of checks. This rook on b7 is really highlighted as being out of play, which, again, comes back to the live position and makes a lot of sense to us why Mitkov played c6. But, yeah, this is going to be an exciting one. I think we stay right here till we see the finish because with only 30 seconds, Robin Van Kampen has got to come up with the right approach to put Mitkov away here, but I don't see it.
My instinct tells me to go queen g6, but I'm worried that I'm leaving the second rank and my king might be exposed.
Right.
But queen g6, it's getting the queen right into the action, threatening queen e8 check. And look at RVK's clock. Down to 10
he's going all the way down on time here. Clearly just decides he can't afford to give up f2, but that might be something that haunts him because now that commitment... That commitment and that loss of tempo, isn't queen h5 check just... I mean, now that the rook is back in the game, black can swing the queen, play rook b to f7, and suddenly there's all kinds of counterplay. Or rook b to f7 first also looks...
I don't like this move order because now queen g6 stops queen h5 check. And, well, maybe there's rook takes f2 check there.
Ooh, h7. This is...
What is going on here?
He gets queen g6, which stops queen... I agree with you. I think Mitkov might have just missed a win. If he had played queen h5 check first and then rook f7, he's got a lot more pressure.
Yeah, and RVK still doesn't have a lot of time, but the thing is, what's going on now is that the rook takes f2 check. It looks like white can ignore it and just go king h3. The point being that if you take my rook on f1, it takes g7 check, leads to a swift mate. So
he plays it. Van Kampen sees it immediately. That's a huge immediate response there, everybody, because one, I mean, he only had 5 seconds and he needed to play it quickly, but two, I don't think Mitkov saw that response.
Oh, definitely not. Now, there's only two options that I see that even prolong the game. One is queen f5 check, trading queens, and the other is bishop d4. Bishop d4
to block the threat on the g7 square. That's the problem, everybody. In fact, white's threatening to win with both queen takes g7 or bishop takes g7 here. This is a... okay, he finds bishop d4.
What a brave soul.
What a brave soul. All right, but with only a few seconds, being brave is one thing. Still being in a lost position is another.
Queen h1?
He has queen h1. Okay, but queen e8 check, king takes 8. Is this going to be one of those really anticlimactic finishes where they peter out to a draw after having... They tricked us.
Well, rook f8. Black can play on. I would go rook f8, and then rook... If
If rook f8 queen, okay, I think he's just going to take the draw. Mitkov decides he's seen enough.
I mean, the thing is, it's very risky to play on, and Mitkov with the black pieces is lower rated than RVK, so it's still a good result.
Okay, rook f8, queen e6 check, king h8. But you're right, though. I think black probably gets away with it by not having any more checks to worry about. White has to be careful about his king coming under fire. So, okay, Mitkov was happy with the draw. That puts the matchup, as far as the matchup with the Bras and the Blizzard, still in control of the Blizzard. So Mitkov probably makes the right move for his team, I guess, to not risk it all the way there. Where do we go next? There's still one other game going down between the Blizzard and the Chess Bras in this round, or is that it? There's one more somewhere.
Yeah, let's see. Well, Mauricio Flores won. He beat Shyam Thevandaran.
Yep, that's right here.
We just saw Mitkov, that exciting draw. So who else would be left? There is
the Beardsman, right? No, the Beardsman drew.
No, Beardson drew.
Okay, no, I think that was it. That was the last game there. So we are focused on the next matchup between the Bishops and the Pawnsgrabbers. Fabiano Caruana did his job. He took care of Atulia Shetty pretty easily in this one. What about their board 2 taking on Want to Lose? What's going on here? Ooh, this is again a game that Bora not living up to his name. He doesn't really want to lose. He's holding his own here. Poor confused guy with his username. Doesn't know whether he wants to lose or not.
At this moment, the first thing you have to calculate is queen d8 check, queen d4 check, right?
No, Robert, you have to calculate. I don't work on these shows, but go ahead, calculate it for us.
I mean, the point is that the problem for black is that the a4 pawn covers both pawns on the queen side.
Right.
So that makes b5 very difficult to play. And after a queen d8 check, king g7, queen d4 check, to me that looks like it's entering close to a winning endgame for white, though maybe I'm just overestimating the white position, because actually you don't even have to take on d4 as well. Oh yes, you do, because the white king is just in time to get over there. So you have to take on d4, and after pawn takes d4, king f6. It's too much to calculate.
But it's still most likely a draw, right? I mean, transition to the king and pawn ending. That's a risk it to get the biscuit kind of decision, but makes sense because black's 2-on-1 is so bad backward there. Shout out to subscriber FNCLL who says he hopes that draw isn't regretted by Mitkov, since Norway almost came back when they were really down. And who knows, maybe the Chess Bras can come back in this one. So I had to make a shout out to subscriber FNCLL because that shows he's been watching this Pro Chess League all day long. So I love that.
Yep. So yeah, I don't know. This pawn endgame will be very interesting, and has to favor white because of the structure on the queen side. But at the same time, maybe Bora has some drawing chance. So I think that it should be close to winning. I don't know. I just that's my gut instinct.
Well, I'm making moves here. White activating the king. Black is going to be the first person who gets a king to the center because d5 will happen no matter what. If king e4, black could play f5 check, and we might get exactly that line.
Start with d5 instead of allowing the king to e6.
But he didn't.
He didn't, did he?
No.
Wow. To me, that seems like a mistake. I guess it's not that big a mistake because if the king comes to d5, the white king can just, well, I guess you could stay put for a second, so you go g4.
Yeah, I was going to say you play g4, and he does it. You just sort of sit tight. Black has to do something now because you can't probably allow g5, just crippling the pawns, everybody. So, but this is just king and pawn ending principles. The fact that black has the more active king may not matter due to white having this pass pawn on d4, and black has no pass pawns. Because this 2-on-1 is kind of the worst 2-on-1 advantage you can have when it's backward and basically not worth any more than white's single a-pawn. So that's an instructive king and pawn ending moment to see that black's active king, normally kind of a huge advantage in an equal material king and pawn ending, right, Robert? Here it may not be the decisive advantage, then the passed d-pawn will probably be that.
Yeah, it's not even an advantage at that point because the one takes care of the two, which means that essentially is like black sort of down a pawn for the time being.
Yeah.
So should we go over to the Awonder Liang game against Forrest Chen? Because Forrest Chen's kind of holding his own.
You've said this before about Forrest Chen, and you've been wrong, my friend.
But I know, but
okay.
I'm supporting him, you know?
Yeah, I'm going to have to find that game here.
It's a Red Nova 1729.
Yeah, I know. I just got a whole lot of games going. Red Nova, rocking, well, attempting to rock someone's world here.
Yeah, like knight b7, good move. And now both a5 and b6 are coming down. Oh, but rook c7 now looks great.
Yeah.
I think he took on a5 with the wrong piece. If you took with a knight on a5, that way your king is still in touch with the c8 square. Now rook c7, the problem is bishop c7, b takes c7, and there's no way to stop white from queening. So that was an
oversight.
It was a commentator's curse. I jinxed Forrest Chen.
Seriously, the moment we went here, look at the analysis board, everybody. The moment we go here, black is fine if he plays knight takes a5. Robert makes the jinx, black plays king takes a5, and rook c7. So before anybody gets on Forrest Chen, let's not forget who the real bad guy here is, and that's Robert Hess.
I'm sorry. My bad. I'm trying to, say good moves. Instead, I jinxed the play. Though it's still not that easy, Danny.
But it's so much worse than it was. If white can just pick up h6 and not let a piece blockade on d5, that's what black needs, right? I mean, what Chen needs is this knight to make the impossible journey on that 3-square diagonal that we talk about and get to d5. And I don't know that he can do it. I mean, how does the knight get there before white threatens? I mean, here comes rook h6, followed by takes and d5 check.
I agree with you. Yeah, it's bad news. So
one of the lines, everybody, is rook h7, knight c4, rook takes. The knight would try to get here, but here both e6 and ideas like d5 check would just be winning for white. So
things are getting saucy in the teammate game between Shabalov and Alejandro.
Yeah. Shabba Dabba completing his nickname with the ding dong. Where are we at with this one?
But look what's going on here. It looks like now all of a sudden Alejandro's blasted open the position. And wait, queen c5 check was the wrong square for that queen. It should have went to b6, threatening queen b6 check, then rook b2. The queen on c5, it gives the same check, but doesn't actually have the best follow-up because rook d4 was the only move probably. And now all of a sudden, black is a little stuck compared to what would have been after queen to b6. So I don't like... Actually, queen b6 was probably just winning. It was queen b6 check instead of queen c5. Rook d4, same move. And then rook b2. The queen needs to move from c2. And then rook takes f5 was hanging. So a missed opportunity for Alejandro. Now f6 for white. I think this match is going... This particular game is going back and forth with every turn. And now f6, of course, was played by Shaba. I don't know who is better here. I would assume white because the attack is just coming through first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the position, and there's no threats for black, and queen g6 is coming. Rook to g4 is going to come back. Is there even a real saucy move like rook takes c4 here? That's just me being nasty. Dirty girl.
Yeah, you're getting ahead of yourself there.
Okay.
But
bishop h3. Good enough. Here comes moves.
So what's the finishing touch here? Knight f4? Yep. Look at the play.
And then e6 comes.
Then you got to go rook b2 and just give up some material. Okay, knight c7. All right, not a bad move. Well, what
Queen
is...
f5 is coming.
Yeah, queen f5 looks pretty good. I guess king h1. I was trying to go rook g1, but I'm not convinced because the rook on d4 will be stuck there. So that's not, it's hard to move it as well. So, whoa, that I don't like. Okay, I also don't like taking back on g7. So many things I don't like that have happened in this game. Because now rook g1 check. Where's that king going? King f7, queen h7 check, right?
Yeah.
And Alejandro goes down again.
Yep. The rook's coming to g8, or we get a resign times, or a loss on time. That's original. Okay, well, again, the Pawnsgrabbers are holding their own currently. With a big win there, they will bring the score that you see there, 4.5 to 2.5. So they're not out of it yet, but still really up against it, going against the St. Louis Archbishop stacked lineup. So, all right, where do we go? So many places, hardly enough time.
Iturizaga beat Grabinski, so he's kind of booing Miami's lineup, and so we might as well go to his teammate, right, with Yunieski Quesada, tennis master, and he is about to win because he's an outside pass. Not outside pass on pawn b6. They just went to b7.
Here
Bishop
comes
a7
the bishop,
now,
and it's over.
Get a queen, over. So over.
Well, the champions, with that win, they're leading the match against the Windmills. And despite the Windmills being pretty heavily favored coming into this one, they spotted the champions a half point, everybody, if you're just joining us, because of a last-minute substitution of Shamanov for the Windmills. So the champions are holding their own right now. This is a matchup we're going to have to cover a little more closely here in the next 2 rounds, since we haven't given them as much time as we'd like. All right. A game I want to check on in the Sopranos match is the one between Alexander Lenderman and Maxi Perez, because it was a beautiful night on e6, but it looks like it's about to be traded off.
Yeah, that night was what you would call a unicorn, though I'm actually very nervous about calling things unicorns after Kristaps Porzingis went down with a torn ACL yesterday. He was one of the unicorns in the NBA, and now he's out for the season.
I'm one of the few people on the planet that believes in unicorns, by the way, just for the record. So, I mean,
maybe you're the only one of the few adults.
So one of the things about this move B5, everybody, is he's saying you may be trading off one of my unicorns, but in doing so, you will open up a new square, and this knight here's potential just went through the roof. He's now got the D5 square. So that's kind of the positional problem for black, is if you sit tight, white will probably get counterplay via things like a4 and a5, or try to manufacture something over on the king side, maybe g3 and f4. But I think that Lenderman is putting on the squeeze here, the Georgian squeeze. And if knight e6, that d5 square will be calling the pony's name. So we like Lenderman in this one for the Sopranos.
Well, and Autumn Simone said in the Twitch chat, unicorns are the national animal of Scotland. So where's the Scottish team, and how do they get a pony into the e6 square and make it a unicorn?
I thought leprechauns were the Scottish.
You're thinking Ireland, man.
Yeah, I know. I was purposely saying that to insult all Scottish people. Sorry, you didn't get it.
So, I'm missing everything today. With the earlier, where's my roommate from?
Yeah. It's all right. It's because you're doing what you're supposed to do. Focus on the chess. Knight a5 is critical. Hit c4. Obviously, everybody, don't put a rook on c1. Actually, maybe you do put a rook on c1, right? You say rook c1. Is black really going to play knight b3 and then trade on c1? This knight is the best piece on the board in a scenario like this, controlling everything. But the big issue with the b3 square is that black will use it not to take on c1, but probably to head to d4. And then we've got some pony play, PG-13 kind.
Oh, boy. You're with the pony play again. No, but you make a really good point, Danny, and I'm surprised to hear myself say that. It's weird coming out of my mouth.
It's okay. Let it flow.
So rook c1, your idea, you're right. That knight on a5 is the only active piece. So maybe black should go g4 and not give up the g pawn. Instead, keep the knight, the possibility of knight b3 later, and that way you use your extra pawn, your extra g pawn, and just play g4 and try to go rook f8, and maybe you can make some progress over there on the king side.
Maxi Perez has proven that this one is not over. Well, that'll be important for the Krakens. There's some other games going on in the Krakens matchup. Closing out of some of the games we've already looked at here. Where do we want to go in the Krakens matchup? Before I crack up.
Pascal? We have Pascal Charbonnet with the black pieces against Alan Pichot.
Yep, got that one up right here.
And that one is it almost feels like somehow white has an extra pawn that they do have an extra pawn, they are up a pawn, but there's a double pawn in the C file and the F file, and that doubled F pawn feels especially weird because it clearly came from H2. Right? Somehow something was captured on G3 and then captured over there on F4. But anyway, black has the two bishops, which is nice. White has central domination. The pawn on C5 does well to limit the squares for the black pieces. The knight on D4 is well placed, but I don't see any way for white to make any progress. For example, if black just shuffles back and forth, rook b7, rook b8, rook a7, rook a8, or rook a7 to b7 is probably smarter, but just trying to make a point, what if black just moves the pieces back and forth? I don't really know what white's plan is. Maybe to eventually try to get the move b4 in, but it seems like a long story. So I think my point at large is that Black seems to be holding his own despite the fact that he is down a pawn.
Yeah, I agree. And as beautiful as the knights look, as you said, it's a closed position where the knights would dominate the bishops, but lack of entry points kind of overrides that sort of positional evaluation, because how do you get in?
Yeah. And we should go over to their teammates with Tom Bartel's game with the Black pieces, because with Black here, he's trying to launch a big kingside attack. And I have to give a credit to his username, because I love Spinal Tap is a great username because of a spoof of like rock, like heavy metal groups back in, I believe, the 70s. It was an SNL sketch. So that's a cool username. But with the Black pieces here, the white king is very much stuck. Knight on h4 can't move. And Black doesn't even has not had to sacrifice any material to get this position. So Danny, I'm really loving Tom Bartel's position here.
Yeah, he's played well today. He already got a big win for the Sopranos in the first game against Alan Pichot, and we know Bartel's a strong international master. We've talked about players who've played a lot in online chess leagues, and maybe Tom isn't as well known as some of the other grandmasters, but Bartel has always been a super strong, especially in rapid chess, international master. He's no stranger to GM scalps, we'll say that. So I agree. This is a really tough position for white. You're always worried about the knight coming into h3. f2's an issue. Bartel taking his time here. That's one thing that could come back to hurt him, because he's probably trying to figure out the way to knock, just totally knock down white's defense. But he doesn't see a knockout yet, and neither do I, honestly. Do you try to get rid of the knight on h4 with a move like knight e6 to f4? I was thinking that might be an idea, because the pawn can't take it without this guy hanging, and if the knight on f4 could come into e2 at some point, I liked that idea, knight e6, but maybe there was something wrong with it.
Yeah, now rook e7 and knight a5. I was thinking that maybe Black should just try to move the king over to the queen side, and that way, if the queens get traded, or when the queens get traded, Black's king is ready to start attacking some of those, the a pawn in particular over there out on the queen side. So. Interesting position for sure.
Okay. And actually, let's see how the man who really started things off properly for the Blizzard, that being Kleinbeer 98, let's see how he's holding up.
Well, I was going to go there, but first we should go to Laquang Liem's game against Brian, because there's, a minute and 50 seconds for Laquang Liem and 6 seconds. Yeah. And, that's going to be a problem.
That's going to leave a mark. Breaks through just in time.
Queen f8, bishop f5, checkmate by force. But
that's how you do work when you've got a queen and bishop mating net. Looking to put the queen on the opposite color diagonal of your bishop, everybody. I know that sounds like a really basic tip, but for a lot of our amateurs or beginner audience, just how quickly you can look at patterns like this and just know there's a mate. When the queen finds herself on the opposite color diagonal of the bishop, that's when the crisscross mate happens. So the reason, of course, that Mr. Tillis resigned is that after queen f8, either king g6 or king h7 are met with bishop f5 mate. So fancy schmancy, pretty easy for a grandmaster of Liem's strength, but big win for the windmills there.
Yep. So and we were just notified that Awonder versus Caruana has just started. So we can look at that later.
Awonder versus Caruana. You're talking, you know what you're doing there. I love that.
Yeah, I didn't mean to tickle your fancy.
You're getting me a little excited. I'm not on camera, so it's okay.
Well, that game is a Roy Lopez.
I thought you were going to say that's a boring game. But
I was actually thinking about saying it, but I appreciate the positional struggle that will ensue. But I actually want to move to a different game because
because you're lying. But the biggest statistical turnaround, I mean, as far as we want to talk about pre-match, I want to go to Kleinbeer's game, because if he does well again here, Robert, to me that's everything the Blizzard need, everything the body needs for the Blizzard to take this one home, because they're now at 5.5, 2.5, and currently now favored in a match that they were the underdog against the Chess Bras. So what's happening in this game here, where Beardson is black?
he's making both Brian Wilson and James Harden proud because he's making people fear the beard. And right now with the black pieces, he's up. What? No, he's not up a pawn, but there's a nice knight on b4 that can't be kicked out by any pawns. The knight just went to g4, so he's playing on both sides of the board, which is very smart. And now all of a sudden the issue is, what does white do about the dark square bishop? Because normally, okay, he just took on c8, so black will recapture on c8, probably with the bishop, just to not allow rook c1. I think if you take with the bishop on c8, the bishop can't stay on this diagonal. I mean, it can try, but a move like bishop d4 allows the trade on d4.
Well,
and black
I really like taking with the bishop on c8 because, I thought he would take with the bishop because once this bishop has to leave that diagonal, the black bishop could have come from c8 to e6 perhaps at some point. Okay, not right away. I guess the knight on g5 would be stopping that, but maybe he has a different battery in mind. Is he going to quickly play queen a8 here and line up the pressure on the e4 pawn?
Yeah, you've four good-looking moves. I can't even tell which one I want to play. Queen b8, queen d8, queen a8 all look fine. Even queen d7 is perfectly reasonable. But the essential point that I was trying to make before, and they started capturing c8, is you can't do anything with his bishop on e3. So let's say queen b8 for argument's sake. The bishop on e3, if it goes to b6 there, well, then all of a sudden there's the move bishop d5 for black, saying I'm going to hit your queen on b3, take your dark square bishop, and start hitting your pawn on f2. And the quality of the black pieces really just speak for themselves. So,
yeah, I mean, it's obviously not over yet. We'll see what happens when the top boards of the Bras face off against the top boards of the Blizzard. But for all those Vin Diesel fans out there who love coloring books, you can look at the visual representation of this match turnaround there as you see the odds that were pre-match. Now you can see the odds in a live match scenario. Like I said, we have some visual learners, I think, in the chat, and that shows you the turnaround again. Pre-match, how our stats through match simulations based on results and ratings versus the live scenario. Excited to see how this one turns around. I love when math is wrong, probably because I dropped out of high school. Robert.
Well, okay, so we'll move on from Bjertsen. I'll keep an eye on his game. He's got a great position, and he's making the fantasy chess team look real good.
Would you stop talking about your fantasies on a live chess show? There are kids here. Okay, where are we moving? Let's go to Mitkov's game.
Okay, let's go to Mitkov. Where are you, Mitkov? I don't even see you right now.
Mitkov versus Kleinman.
Well, Mitkov's got his rook down at a1, which looks nice, but it actually isn't doing so much because maybe, I guess white will have to go queen c2, bishop c1, bishop b2 to kick it. So maybe it is doing a lot by just sitting there and forcing white to regroup. And how does white make any progress? That's a big question. The only open file is the A file, and black has control of it. I guess you could try to move your knight from f3 and play for f4, but that could be very risky because that opens up the bishop on g7 to the pawn on c3.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're Kleinman here, you really just move your pieces around and then don't do anything. So go queen d2, whatever, and then put your bishop on c2, trade the rooks, and just kind of agree for a draw. And the knight on b7 is not a particularly good piece. And so just keep the position closed and say, you know what, you played well. Let's just agree that this game is not going anywhere. That's what I would do if I was white, probably. But here he plays bishop c1 and is going over to b2. But that bishop is, stinks on b2. I don't know. I don't really like.
But this is a huge round, so we'll see if the Blizzard can stretch their lead and continue to defy the odds, pre-match odds, or if we'll come back here and see if the Bras held on. There's some games that are getting much closer to finishing, though, and some of the matches we haven't been giving as close attention to. Let's go to the game between Lenderman and Maxi Perez, which was one that caught my fancy earlier.
Okay, so Perez is still up a pawn, but now Lenderman is finally opening up some lines for his rooks. By going a5, his rook can eventually find its way to a7. However, black with the double rooks in the f file can always just drop a rook back to the f7 square.
Well, the question will be if b6 becomes a weakness, right? If white can find some way that the b6 pawn becomes a target, either due to things like knight d5 eventually hitting it, which he goes for now, or the rook coming in.
You know what I'm saying? I'm tired of.
You know what? You're going for it? Are you all in?
I'm all in because, okay, well, it's not my pieces, so I can go all in.
Yeah.
But my sense of point is that I need to take that pawn f3, threaten the h3 pawn with my rooks.
Yep.
I thought you were in time to do that.
Let me see if it worked in the analysis. If knight takes f3 with tempo, takes and rook takes, there could have been some serious issues there. I wonder if Perez missed that. I think you might have been right, Robert.
And he's playing for Lenderman's clock. Look at the time situation.
Which is a huge mistake. I mean, in general, this is a good. We'll see what happens in this game, but I think that's a huge mistake. And when you have 5 minutes more than your opponent and they're under 30 seconds, this is how winning games are lost, everybody, is you start. What Perez needs to do is use his extra 5 minutes to come up with some strong chess moves and put Lenderman under pressure.
Right. And you're right. It is a common mistake that players make, is that I should go try to flag you instead of trying to outplay you in a position where black is just up a pawn. And now, how to make... Okay, rook b7.
Yeah, he's still better. Don't get me wrong. I think that if that trend continues, this is not a one game yet for black. This king is potentially open, and Lenderman is a grandmaster who can swindle his way to a victory. So it's just... You hate seeing that when you know that a disciplined approach is really how you put people away when you're better.
But still, Maxi Perez is actually playing a really nice game. So a rook b2 is possible, rook b3 is possible, h4 maybe at some point, trying to... Well, I don't really like h4 because it gives... Well, actually, h4, knight e2. That might be a good way to reroute that knight.
That's a nice move by Lenderman right there, though.
Yep.
Trying to open up the d-file, everybody. He would happily trade off that pawn for this pawn and suddenly pressure against the king. So, okay.
The good news for Maxi Perez is that white has no threat because knight takes d4 is not that scary.
Right.
And maybe you can make a move like, I don't know, rook b6 or... But the trend is favoring white. That's for sure.
For sure. Yeah.
And, okay, I'm just...
He's going for it. He's trading off the pawn for the d6 pawn. I think... Ooh, he has rook f1, which was perhaps missed. Look at this nice potential finish. If rook takes b1, rook takes b1 with check, and then h4, kicks the queen off of the dark squares, and that could be super problematic for white.
Yes, and after queen g4... So actually, h4 is a great move, Danny, because h4, queen g4, and then queen f4 check, saying you have to take me on f4.
And
then
I just take the structure.
You fix the structure, then your c pawn is starting to roll.
Yeah, and this king on h2 has no ability to get over and help defend, completely trapped on the corner. So you're right. Yes. I think that could be excellent technique by Perez, which would be a huge upset here for the Krakens. A needed win for the Krakens if they have a chance in this match.
Yeah, and just the end game where, well, maybe the end game is not so clear, honestly. I mean, the problem is once the white rook stays behind the c pawn, it's not that easy to make progress. Perhaps.
Well, I think a real issue is actually that if h4, queen g4, queen f4 trades, white immediately has rook d5, forking c5 and g5.
Right.
I think.
That's a fair point. I don't know if I care about, or maybe I should care about it, but I was just going to
No, but you're right. Black is probably winning. c4, rook g5, c3, rook c5, rook c1.
Yeah, it's got to be some kind of...
It has to be winning, right? There's no way the white rook can hold the king back and the c pawn at the same time. Eventually, this king is gonna go Bilbo on this and go drop a ring in some sort of Star Wars entry point.
Although actually, if you push your pawn to c2 and the rook stays behind it, then there's no entry squares, right? The rook will just stay on c8, and all of a sudden, there's no progress to be made. So you have to be very cautious before pushing your pawn.
He traded on g4.
Okay, so now c4.
Rather than queen f4 check. That's
what's going on?
Strange. I guess he just wanted the extra tempo, so...
Yeah, but can he...
The difference is that you have to be worried about that decision because it may let the white king out. Okay, I guess g3 is still hard to do. But if I'm white, I look to play g3 ASAP. Like right now.
Yeah, g3
that wasn't a good move, I don't think. I don't think the e5 pawn is critical.
But okay, if rook e5, you still can't go c2. That's the problem. Is c2 should immediately result in a draw. Because rook c5, and then there's no way to use your king to get into the action.
That's not true, though. Eventually, the king will get in.
How? I'll put my rook on c5 and keep my rook on c8. And when your king gets in, I give you a million checks.
Yeah, but I can eventually come into f2.
And then what? And then I just go rook c7, rook c5, rook c8, whatever.
Huh. There's no tempos like h3 or anything. Yeah, I guess you're right. There's no...
That's always the issue, for everyone listening, that by pushing your pawn too far,
right,
rook gets tied to that pawn, and there's no access for the king to get in. Whereas if the pawn stays on c3, he did go c3. The possibility is the king could somehow snake over to c2. Now the king has no access square.
Eventually, here, everybody, that's Robert's point. The king can eventually hide from checks and you win with a Lucino or bridge type method. But so white is going. Linderman is going to check this black king as soon as it gets here. We're gonna see if your prophecy is correct. One outside chance is that the king goes to f1, and then eventually you move the rook to e2. But there's no way that'll work because white won't even trade on e2. White will just give check on it on c1 at the end of that line.
Right.
So this is a draw. You're right.
And there was a result in that Tom Bartel and Leandro Crisa drew. So Bartel now moves to 1.5 out of 2. He probably was hoping for more in this game because he had a good position, but he still is drawing a strong grandmaster with black. I see another result in that Jordan Van Forest. He won with the black pieces over Mauricio Flores. So that's not good for the Blizzard and a great sign for the chess brats. And all right, so what games do we have going? So we still have this end game going on. We have Fabiano Caruana playing Awonder Liang. We have Shabalov playing against Fedoseev. So we got some cool matchups in this round here.
Let's check on Caruana and Liang, even if it's not as far along as some of the other games. It's a couple of big names people usually want to keep their tabs on. But we will keep an eye on how long it takes Maxi Perez to acknowledge that he's given Linderman a draw. So, but in that last rook ending, I think, as we highlighted for you guys, I'll keep the main board on the Yang's game with Caruana. But again, as Robert said, the king has nowhere to hide from checks if it's on the open files, and there's not enough to poke over here. There are sometimes some scenarios where, imagine this pawn isn't on g2 but on h3, where you can sometimes sacrifice the pawn and force a king and pawn ending, where you transition from the rook ending to a winning king and pawn ending. And I think those were some ideas I was originally thinking of, Robert, but none of those ideas are possible here for black. So yeah, it's just going to be a draw. All right, well, looks like they're about to repeat. So are we diving deeper into the game between Caruana and Awonder Liang with some analysis, or are there other games that we should go check on?
I'm just going to look to see if there are any games in time.
Let's check on Mitkov's game. Kleinman only has 21 seconds.
And the position has
not gone anywhere since we left it. It's pretty much the exact same position we left it at.
Well, black has, I think, actually gained some in this position because now that knight is no longer on b7, it's on f7, which is a very good defensive piece. And the other knight can go to d7 to b6 and maybe even over to a4. So white has to be very careful. And this is what I was saying earlier. If I was white, I would have tried maybe just to say, you know what, you played well, you have a good defensive setup, we'll make a draw. A move like f4, from white's point of view, if white ever goes f4, well, that leaves g4 square vulnerable to knight h6. And so all of a sudden, white has to be very, very cautious in a position like this. So knight d7 was indeed played.
Yep.
F4, oh boy, don't like that. It's now queen b6. I would trade those queens immediately, saying, you know what, your c3 pawn's gonna be in trouble. I'm removing the guard of the rook on e1, so your bishop on d1 is pinned. And so just take over those dark squares. Maybe even pawn takes.
This seems like a really weird move to play. That's a time pressure move. And knight h6 is a brilliant move. Yeah, Kleinman kills himself here, everybody. Any other move is better than f4. f4 gives up g4. It's the wrong idea to open up the e5 square anyway. That is a time pressure panic move that's going to come back to bite the chess pros. By the way, Robert, I have to say, I'm a little hurt by the chat believing that I might be a flat earther. Just because I said I believe in unicorns, those are two completely different things.
Yeah, they just Kyrie Irving'd you, so that's not cool.
I mean, what did I do to deserve the flat? That is a blunder by the Twitch chat. I'm not happy about that.
Oh, boy. Well, I don't even know what to say to them because...
That's what you get, chat. I just spammed you with subscriber emotes. That's a blunder. I am not a flat earther. I actually know somebody who does legit believe in mermaids, unicorns, and flat earthers. Unicorns are a thing, all right? And never mind. It's hard to go into this, but all right, here we go. Okay, Mitkov is going to win here. The Blizzard are still in control.
Yeah, Blizzard are doing well. And Mikov just showing kind of positional dominance here. He says, I take back on e5 with my d pawn. Go ahead, have a passed pawn, but my knight will go to d6 if necessary. My bishop on d7 already covers.
Well, this is a nice move too, because white had no way to take it due to the pin immediately on the e2, knight to the d1 rook, everybody. So white is getting closer to some sort of almost zugzwang. Maybe just bring this knight from b6 to d6, where it pokes at e4.
Yeah, maybe king g7, right? Bring your king to the center.
Right.
Too many options can sometimes be a bad thing, honestly. But the good news for Mikov is he has so much time. Like king g7, natural. Now he's showing why, he's showing his grandmaster talent. Uh-oh, that's not going to be good. Rook a2 now. Bye-bye to a minor piece.
Rook a2. A piece is a piece, as they say.
Yep.
And
rook
the
c1,
idea, everybody, is knight e3 is coming.
And here it is. So f4 was a terrible decision in a classical game, and an even worse decision when you have no time on your clock. So I don't really like that choice.
Yeah. It all really started to go downhill, and you can see, based on the evaluation of the analysis board, everybody, that it's just big problems. Knight comes into h6, and there's no real way to start defending all the pressure because you just opened up all the squares black needs.
By the way, Beardson has checkmate in 1, and he still hasn't moved. So I don't know what's going on there.
Really?
Like, are they both missing that queen d3 is checkmate? Because I'm looking at the game, and queen d3 is indeed checkmate.
It's the Pro Chess League. Never underestimate.
But queen d3 is mate, and yet black has not made a move.
Queen d3 is mate on the board, and black has no connection issues. We can see he has a stable connection, so that's...
He doesn't see checkmate in 1?
Is he? I think he's calculating knight h2 and deciding whether or not he can get away with winning the bishop and just not realizing he has mate on the board.
That is unbelievable if he doesn't play checkmate in 1, because he's played such a good event thus far that if he doesn't see mate in 1, that's crazy. But let's see. So Mikov's winning. We saw that.
He doesn't see it. Oh my gosh.
No way. Okay, he's still completely winning.
He just sat on the position, and he wins by resignation anyway. But can we... can we just say that I love the way you first observe the game. Like, I'm not sure what's wrong with Kleinbeer here, but he has mate in 1 and he hasn't moved for about a minute and a half. That's hilarious. Wow, that's funny stuff.
I just couldn't believe my eyes.
Yeah, clippable moments brought to you by Robert Hess. Queen e3 was checkmate on the board, everybody. If you don't believe us, you might be a flat earther. So let's move on to wherever else you want to take this beautiful part of the program, Robert.
Let's go to Tang versus Van Kampen, because Tang only has 16 seconds left and counting down. And the position is very complicated, which is not a good sign for Tang with so little time on the clock. And what is going on here? That bishop on b2 is fantastic. The bishop on b7 is equally, eyeing at the white king side. But I hate that knight on h8. So what is going on here?
You've always hated knights on h8, though. You're prejudiced.
Yeah.
You're a hater.
Yeah. Well, h8, hate, that's funny. So I am a hater. And I don't know. I think RVK's position was better a couple moves ago, and now all of a sudden white has clear threats. Knight takes a 5.
Well, this is what the Blizzard need. And we know what the Blizzard's success is going to need for the whole season, right? They're going to need Tang to be a beast, and they've got to get upset wins, which right now they've had that recipe, and Tang is about to do it again.
Although I think he just blundered, because now rook takes e6 for black, and at the end of this all, black will go knight takes f4, followed up with bishop takes g2 check, and the bishop on b2 is hanging. So
yep, and Robin Van Kampen sees it, and he's going to go for this, even with the trade on e6 with the queens. Everybody doesn't change the analysis line I was just showing. Knight takes f4 is still coming for black, but he didn't see it. He didn't see knight takes f4.
And then white didn't see rook g6. Wasn't rook g6 hitting the pawn on g7? So they're both just playing.
They're just under an incredible amount of time pressure and not calculating the tactics. Bishop takes g7 there.
Oh, check! Is he trying to checkmate him with bishop e4 check?
Bishop e4 check. He didn't see it coming. Mate and bake. Takes on g6. Takes on f7, and then wins d5 with. No, he doesn't win d5 because both things are hanging.
But you take on c8. This was a blunderfest and time trouble, but it's still not over, because that king on h1, knight g4 coming at some moment, all of a sudden the The king
Yeah,
could find
it's
something.
actually with only 5 seconds. Van Kampen, I was going to say he has a chance, but I think he's about to be mated. Bishop f5.
Oh, yeah.
This ain't the first time that Tang has weaved himself a mating net with only seconds on the clock, and he does so. Rook to c8, drops the mic, and walks out. I wonder if he drinks Tang while he plays.
I can't believe it because this is. I feel like every week we see Tang, on the precipice, just about to lose, and then all of a sudden, he wins the game in his own time trouble. So.
Yeah. Well, with that, by the way, everybody, the Blizzard continue to show their turnaround and that they were wrongly not favored in this match. Mitkov did take care of Kleinman over here, everybody, the game that we left behind. And in fact, before the last round is even underway, the Blizzard have already clinched the match.
Wow, that's crazy.
Not the Chess Bras week.
Not
wow,
at all. But
that
can
hurts.
We go to the Fabiano game because he might be losing.
Don't ever say that again.
I mean, I'm just saying that there's a passed B pawn, and I don't see any black pawns over there on the queen side, and so.
Look at you. You're stealing
I don't
one
know
out
what
of
to
my
say.
book, which is that you don't know what
Yeah.
to say.
Yeah, I feel clueless.
Yeah, Liang is, well, this is, okay. They're still in a really tough spot, being the Pawnsgrabbers, going up against Caruana and Fedoseev. But as we said, if they have any chance, what did we say? It would be no wonder that it would be Awonder who leads them to an upset victory. That's their only chance, is Awonder Liang not only beating Fabiano Caruana, but he has to do well against Fedoseev as well.
Right. And Fabiano has been the one thus far playing really well, and Fedoseev has been the one struggling a bit. But this was, yeah, I mean, somehow, what's his face? Awonder came out. I don't know. It seemed like
Can he just
doing
trade and
early.
play Rook B1 because B7 is unstoppable.
Yep, and Fabi's going down to Awonder. So Awonder last week beat Hikaru Nakamura with the black pieces. This week he follows it up with the white pieces against Fabi. And, note that in just a couple months, they'll be playing each other in the U.S. Chess Championship. And Awonder, granted this is a rapid game, but it's a serious game nonetheless. Awonder's showing
he's showing that he's ready. He's ready at least to make the big boys think about him, right? We don't know how he'll do in a closed tournament like the U.S. Championship. Nakamura, Caruana, Wesley So. That's a tough field, in case you're keeping track of people north of 2780. But yeah, no. But he's going to win this one. And the Pawnsgrabbers, as we can see, are not out of this match. Remember the tweet that we started the show with? They are not out of this match, and they're going to make St. Louis work for it, if nothing else. Amazing to me, honestly, the performance from the Blizzard. I'm just my mind is blown. And I know that it wasn't the best chess from Robin Van Kampen today, and obviously the beardsman brought the full beard to the table, but I'm really impressed with the Wizard at this point.
Yeah, the Blizzard have been great without Nagel, but Beardson, maybe the new Nagel. Maybe they've replaced, they benched Nagel, and they got Beardson instead. That's a clearly a strong player.
Lego my ego. Nagel, where's Nagel? Finagle my Nagel. I don't know.
I'm looking at the Twitch chat, and I see Greg Shahadi, Commissioner Greg Shahadi, saying, Awonder is so obviously going to be world chess champion. Just plays way too good against super strong players. I know he's being using hyperbole, but I'm just going to ignore him because that's just something you shouldn't say about someone who's young and trying to become better, and just puts a lot of pressure that's unnecessary. So bad Greg.
Yeah, Greg has a flair for the dramatics. That's kind of his thing.
And for so whose game should we
Not sure where to go. There's so many options. Not enough time.
Well, should we stay within this match and go to well, we haven't seen Fedoseev versus Shaba, and Shaba.
Yeah, I was going to say that's really the one that
on Fedoseev.
He's doing work.
Yeah,
I got to get there. I can't get there fast enough. Shabalaba, show me the ding. Oh, wait, that's weird. Okay, nope.
No,
not
Danny,
gonna say it. I didn't say it, but he is doing work.
Okay, I'm gonna go out and say this right now, Danny. Fedoseev is the most disappointing player.
Free agent from the first half of the season. I agree. I don't think it's. You say a lot of things that turn a lot of heads and get a little people. Not little people. There's nothing wrong with little people, but get certain people a little frustrated. But Fedoseev, again, I think it's the risk of free agents that are way outside of your time zone. I mean, it's an inherent risk, and Fedoseev is in Moscow right now, probably all alone, thinking about, man, I had way too much borscht for dinner because I'm sleepy time, and that's what's going on in Fedoseev's head right now. So it's hard to blame him.
That's so funny. Sleepy time. Well, we can also stay in this. Well, okay. Hopefully, Shaba, for his sake, pulls this one out. Little peasant. That is Alejandro Ramirez playing against international master Safal Bora. Want to lose, and he does want to lose this game because it looks like he's down a million pieces. He does have a queen. Black has a queen, but White has a rook and 2 minor pieces, 2 knights and a rook for the cost of a queen. And does he also have a pawn? Nope, does not have a pawn for it. But lots of material.
Yeah, these are my favorite kind of games.
Yeah, just like
pieces outplaying the queen.
Yeah, this is not very good for International Master Bora.
Yeah, and White's building himself a bit of a mating net. And H4 is
Danny?
What?
Danny, can we go to Forrest Chen and Attilio Shetty? Speaking of mating nets, and Forrest Chen might be the hero that St. Louis needs, but definitely does not deserve. Because right now, Forrest Chen is up a piece. Let's just do a material count, up a piece. And this black king is not escaping for long. At least I don't see how it is going to escape.
Yeah, I mean, you can't take with the f-pawn. Mate is on the board after queen takes e6. There's just no way to deal with threats like queen g8 and rook a7. So what does he do? He can't take with the king either. It's over. I mean, king g7 is the best move, which it's not a pleasant G spot for the king right there. I got to be honest.
Wow. Then bishop takes f7. Well, you go queen g4 here. Bishop takes f7. One of these moves is just completely crushing.
You close your eyes and let the hand take you where it wants to go.
Yep, it's like throwing a dart. You know, just close your eyes and throw it, and it'll stick. Because what is?
Whoa! Rook h8?
Did I just jinx him again?
Why would you need to be? Queen takes e3, guards h6, bro. That was the worst move possible. And I just used the term bro, and I meant it. Oh my gosh!
I'm just.
What is your deal with Forrest Chen?
I want him to win. He's playing well.
You want him to win so bad, you're jinxing him. The next time we go to his game, you're knocking on wood before we do anything else.
The thing is, look at this. You know, he had a great position. He was doing fine on the court.
Oh my gosh!
And he tried to get like a little finesse shot in, and it just backfired. So he has to go queen takes h6 check here, no other move, and sacrifice the exchange and take on f7 and hope that he's enough for a draw. Now he's about to flag. So he's adding.
I'm literally. It hurts how funny I think this is. I'm sorry. It's just terrible. That was terrible. It's horrible for the kid.
That was such a bad move.
It was such a bad, and it was just unnecessary. Again, everybody, jokes aside, and it's our job to. It's not our job, but we do have a lot of fun on this show. You just don't need to do that. That's how you lose winning games. Rook h8 was unnecessary. You're in a position where bishop takes f7. Just clearing a check is going to be enough to win this position. Really sad stuff here with a position that now. Okay, I mean, in all seriousness, he shouldn't maybe lose this position, although he probably will, I guess, if the d4 pawn's falling. He just made that move with 0.1 seconds on the clock.
Wow, and he's he's still losing now. I mean, well, actually, there is some chance to draw.
In fact, if he can establish the pawn on h5 and guard the bishop on g6, very nice move there by Shetty. Good technique. Make sure this king gets no further up the board. Now rook a4 followed by e5 is a real problem. Yeah, Shetty's going to win.
Yeah, he should have won rook a3 and then rook d3. Yeah,
and that's exactly what he's doing. Yeah.
So
okay. Black will go on to win.
Spaghetti, right?
Heartbreaking loss there. What?
Is it Mom's Spaghetti?
Mom's Spaghetti. Oh, man. Get that on your shirt. Wow.
Wait, how did Alejandro draw? Oh, my.
This is a match that has the makings of an epic meltdown by St. Louis. And not to say the bishops aren't doing what they need to do, you know, sorry, the Pawnsgrabbers aren't deserving, but right now it just feels like St. Louis is beating themselves a little bit.
Yeah, and Alejandro drew a completely winning game. And why did I pick him on my fantasy chess team? Alejandro, I hope you're listening. You are ruining my fantasy chess season.
I could have told you that.
So Attilio Shetty wins. Now, that is an epic turnaround in this.
Epic turn. So what happened to Caruana's game? He did go down officially.
Did they lose 3.5 half this round? I think they did.
Yeah, and as we go and check things out with that sweep by the Pawnsgrabbers, not quite a full sweep, but 3.5 half. You look at the live odds there again, everybody. Get out your coloring books if that's something you do at home, and let's see what happens when we update the live odds. Right now, even with the Pawnsgrabbers having a 7-5 lead, we still are predicting the most likely result as an 8-8 tie, based on the matchups of Fedoseev and Caruana against the top boards. But again, that's the issue, Robert, is that a lot of that's based on Fedoseev's strength as a chess player, not his strength in the PCL, which is honestly, apparently 2 a.m. Fedoseev needs to be sleeping and not playing chess. I mean, what else are we supposed to say right now? I mean, with Awonder getting big wins and Fedoseev falling asleep at the keyboard.
Yeah,
okay.
And Alejandro was talking to me in the Twitch chat. He said that he loves me anyway, and I said I pick him every week, and I gave him a commentator's curse. And he goes, well, can you stop doing that so I can win some games?
Yeah, we're not going to put this one on Bobby. We're blaming Chen's performance on you, but Alejandro needs to pull it together and remember the infamous incident in the back of my Honda Civic. That's all I'm going to say, and stop doing it to himself.
Danny, we got to go over to Laquang Liam's game against Unieski Quesada because
yes, sir. I do as I'm told.
As hectic gets at the moment. There is a white knight on G7. There is a rook and queen on the G file.
Yeah, this is what the people pay for.
Okay, so what can black do here? So you don't want it. So the problem is rook takes G7. There's queen takes E7, making use of the fact that there's the rook on G7 is pinned. It can't capture back on E7. So that looks like a good transition for white. Queen C3 check. The king just goes over to E2. I don't see any follow-up. So if I can't take on G7, and if I can't take with a queen on G7, because then the queen just moves off the G file and you lose material because you have to go knight G6 to block, and then all of a sudden there's still pressure down the G file. So what can be played? King H8? I mean, that's the only thing I see.
I mean, I was just going to say the worst move on the board might be the best move. Just move your king off of the G file. Might be black's only option here.
Which is crazy because you've just given up the pawn in front of your king, and you're saying, you know, that's not a big deal. Let me just scoot to the side.
But the big thing is that if you play king H8, I mean, on the analysis is that at least now you're threatening to take on G7 finally.
Right.
Whereas you weren't before.
That's true. So king H8 makes too much sense.
And the reason why, everybody, again, taking here isn't a threat because of queen takes E7 and the rook is pinned and white's attack continues to be nice. I don't know that Liam is defending totally on king H8, but it feels like the only move on the board for black. He's only got 90 seconds to figure it out, so let's not go anywhere else.
Yeah, I think that he's in big trouble. I'm going to check the score of this match. I see it's up right now. And Webster 4, Miami 5.5.
No, the champions are doing well. Whoa, right, rook takes C2?
Whoa. Okay, so bishop C2, queen C3 check. I guess he's going for a draw, saying that queen C3, if you go to C1, I have queen A1 back to C3, and that queen just goes on a yo-yo string. And if queen C3 check, king E2, then queen takes C2 check, and
you get E4 with check, which I assume is going to be enough.
Yeah, that doesn't look very pleasant.
Yeah.
But maybe it's possible. Quesada should think before he, just repeats and makes a draw here. So
yeah, he doesn't have to just take on C2 and allow the tickle to ensue on A1 and C3. He can try to run. I mean, I almost wonder if he can play king E3 here.
King E3?
I mean,
you're the bravest man I've ever met.
Before you laugh at me, what's your next check?
Okay, well, what's white's check? So before I say what my check is, can I just go rook takes H2 and say you can use a discover in the G file and get nothing out of it?
Yeah, you might be able to. All right, fine.
That would have been the craziest position ever. So
he did take it, and it looks like he's headed for a draw. So
Yeah, going to e2 would be
Yeah,
would be
e2.
nuts.
Giving c2 and e4 with check is too much.
Yeah. So okay, that is. I'm still kind of mad at Forrest Chen. Like I had such high hopes for him in this game.
Yeah.
By the way, Nikki Rosensalsa beat Aaron Grabinski.
Well, that's nice. Doing something
that's
now that I
helping the
don't
Miami
have him
champion.
on my fantasy team.
So, by the way, I owe the champions an apology because I predicted that Webster would be the high score of the week, and instead, the champions are really putting the pedal to the metal and giving them a tough test. But, okay. So, this game looks like it's about to fizzle out into the draw.
Yep. So, where else do we go in the Windmills match? Who else is still playing in this round of champions versus Windmills?
So Tillis lost to Colas. So Colas beat Tillis. Rosensalsa beat Grabinski. Who else is left? I think this is the last game in that match for the round is Laquang Liang versus Quesada.
Well, there's a number of games going in the Sopranos matchup with the Krakens. Let's start with Pascal's game against Mr. Bleed Deep, Bleed Deep, 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 Deep. Pascal is black and looks like he's got an attack, some compensation here against the white king. Giving some checks looks good. Just bringing the rook to d8 looks good. Hitting d2 looks like Pascal's going to make up for his less than stellar performance so far in this game.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull that up with Mr. Pascal. For some reason, not seeing it, but he just Pascal C or not.
Aaron Berg is taking on Peugeot. That's another one that'll be interesting for us to check on. Maxi Perez is taking on Tom Bartel. Bartel so far the hero, really, for the Sopranos. Let's check on that one. Spinal Tap doing work once again.
Okay. Spinal Tap, where are you? There you are. Okay, playing Maxi Perez and Spinal Tap with the black. Wait, what? There's a bishop on b2 and a pawn on a3.
That's not something you see every day.
Black's up two pawns. And white's compensation is going to have to stem from this e6 square. As if somehow the knight and the bishop, which are teaming up on the e6 square right now, queen a5 played, which I think is probably really smart, saying, let's trade queens. And if the queens are traded, then the e4 pawn also will fall down.
Apparently, I pronounce windmills windmills when I'm not thinking about it. Kind of like pin and I don't know. Do I have an accent?
I've never heard that. But it is making me hungry.
Have you ever eaten with your hair blowing in the wind?
Yeah.
Pocahontas might remind you to taste the colors of the wind. So I don't know. I mean,
well,
I'm not going to start singing. Everybody, calm down. I desperately want to.
Are you sure that you have an almost 2-year-old, or are you the actual 2-year-old?
I have too many kids in my home, and I blame it on the kids.
Yeah.
Some people make dumb decisions and blame it on the night. I blame it on the kids.
Ooh, blame it on night. Just blame it on.
How's he dealing with the e3 bishop, by the way? That's a problem.
Bishop f2, and then I guess
knight takes e4.
But then e6 is hanging.
Not if I take with the f knight. Can I get away with it? I can take back on e6 with this pony.
That's true. And the queen and bishop cover the g7 square.
Yeah.
So yeah, it looks plenty good.
I'm liking Bartel.
Yeah, Tom Bartel. He's 1.5 out of 2. He's if he wins this, if he converts, he will move to 2.5.
Didn't Bartel finish in the MVP running one year for the U.S. Chess League? I don't know. That's like a fact that only a dinosaur would know. But I feel like Bartel is he should be on everybody's fantasy team. Whoa, he says, I don't care about the pawn with check. Take it with the bishop, and I'll just put the king on g7, and you got nada. I like that too.
Saying, you know what, take the exchange. It's not important because the bishop on b2 is worth at least a rook.
Yep.
Right, it covers b1 square. It's just really hounding white's position. So, yeah, very nicely played by Tom Bartel.
Agreed.
And who else do we have going on here?
Yeah, no, I I taste the rainbow and I smell the colors. Who am I doing, Robert?
I don't know.
Charles Barkley, taste the rainbow and smell the colors.
Charles, so you know, I actually missed Charles Barkley last night because they had their players only on TNT, and it was just ridiculousness.
Yeah.
I don't know if you watched that basketball, but it was Shaq and Baron Davis and Chris Webber and Zeke, Isaiah Thomas, and they were so ridiculous. So I was like, where's Charles? Where's Ernie?
We got to move on ASAP before I start doing my Barkley impression. We got a lot of chess left, and in fact, probably the matchup that's going to have us most intrigued is Caruana and Shabba Dabba Ding Dong. Shabba is already making this thing tricky. He'll probably be clearly worse in the next 30 seconds, but it is tricky currently on the board.
I mean, typical Shabba, right? Just mixing it up. And let's see, he's got double isolated eat pawns, but they're not that terrible. And I think white should probably just go c3. Yep, and c3 is played, so Fabi plays that. And say, well, I'll play against your double pawns all day. I can expand on the queen side later with d4.
Yep.
And 2 bishops speak for themselves. So I really like Fabi's position, though maybe Shabba can take on e2 and try to go knight h5 at some point, but white will just go g3 and not with the knight to f4. So I think that Shabba is significantly worse here.
Yep. And it's really instructive to see everybody, again, not hard to believe when taking here immediately on doubles the pawns, but it's just the positional technique. You don't want to fix your opponent's structure. You want to gang up on it. Kick the knight out of d4. Probably just move the queen off of d1 so there's no tactics on the d file. And slowly, as Robert said, expand on the queen side, maybe challenge the d file. This is a positional nightmare for Shabba. He wanted it to get messy, but it's not going to be as messy as he wants. Some games getting under time pressure will be a little messier than this, though. We should probably keep our eye on the Sopranos game here, the Sopranos matchup. Again, I mean, Bartel's game is getting under time pressure. We have Lenderman. Let's check on Lenderman's game, which we haven't seen in a little while. Taking on Krisa. What do we got here? Lenderman is better at first glance as white, but will it be enough? You got d5 as a weakness. You got the h-file. Yeah, this is a big game here, because if Lenderman wins this one and starts to right his ship in the final rounds for the Sopranos, I think we'll be back to favoring them to win.
Yeah, and right now Lenderman has control of the open H file. Black's rook is on c8, which is technically an open file, but the knight in c3 is clearly blocking it. And so I think now all of a sudden we'll see Lenderman start poking at the pawn. So rook h5.
Yeah, but I was thinking that rook h5 is met by rook g8, and then what? Okay, that's an interesting move. He's relocating the bishop back to the queen side. Might even be preparing an eventual penetration path by the king on f2 to come up to f3.
I don't like that move. You know, as much as I like creating that kind of path, I think that now black can maybe go knight g8 and put that knight in f6, which is a better square for the knight.
Yep.
And, okay, he didn't do that. And my idea behind knight f6, putting my knight f6, actually I'm trying to go knight e4 check, even and trade off the knight so my rook can come down the c file. Okay, so knight a4, b6, played instantly. And now knight c3 back. So that was really well done by Lenderman there, creating an additional weakness.
Yeah.
So now the light squares on the queen side are quite weak. Bishop can go to a6 to cut that rook off from the c file if need be. And not to mention the b5 square is white's for the taking already. So I would start with maybe just bishop f3 here, questioning black, what are you going to do? Knight f5, the clear intention was to go knight d6, but after bishop f3, you're certainly not putting your knight in d6. And in fact, knight d6 might run into bishop f3 anyway. So,
well, if you go back to f3, black's going to go back to e7, and the issue is we're kind of just playing tickle, right? Didn't you just do that? The bishop was on f3, and you moved to t2. So whatever the plan is that you don't like that Lenderman is trying to execute, he's committing to it now with bishop b5 check. Does this bishop want to have a home on c6 where it pokes at the d5 pawn from the back door? Or is there something else he has in mind here? I think at this point, not making a critical decision and kind of just poking at black's weaknesses, see how much time pressure Krisa is going to create for himself. That would be the Georgi Kachashvili approach, right? That Lenderman would be sort of inheriting. Just kind of keep the position as it is, see if your opponent beats himself under time pressure.
Yeah, and Lenderman is very, very good at that because he's very calm. He's extremely patient. and he knows how to poke and prod and force his opponent into a few weaknesses.
Yep.
And if you see the clock situation, Lenderman, who is very good at blitz, both online and in person, he's got a 2.5 minute advantage on the clock essentially.
Yep.
And he's been playing very quickly and confidently as well. So I love Lenderman's position. I love his clock situation. By the way, Alan Pichot beat Sergei Ehrenberg with the black pieces, delivered checkmate on board. So that's a big win for the Krakens.
Yeah, I was wondering where is that game, and it's over there. So the Krakens take a 5-4 lead. For those of you wondering, I saw a comment, why is it 0% that Webster and Miami will finish on a tie? It's because Webster sacrificed a half a point to start the match, so it will be an uneven score no matter what, because they made a last-second substitution for their board too. So Webster was docked a half a point to start this day, if you're just joining us. So knight d6. Now the bishop can come back to c6, though. I don't like that move at all. Bishop c6 is maybe met by knight c4, but it feels like if this b2 pawn falls for the d5 pawn, white is very happy with that. This move knight d6 took away the square for the king. Yeah, I was going to say, this is exactly what Lenderman wanted. Notice he sat on the position, a4, didn't go play tickle one more time, but now infiltrates when the king can no longer defend d5, and white's better.
A big problem is rook c8. I was going to suggest this move, but now the problem is black should take on d5, as has been done, and the bishop versus the knight is certainly in white's favor because white can go e4, e5.
Yep.
White can consider putting the king over on g4. I think maybe rook c1 here first.
Or even rook h7 first. Rook h7 followed by king g4, e4, e5. This is a lot of problems for black to deal with the f7 pawn. I like your move rook c1 too. I'm not sure what's better, but even e4. I mean, e4, e5 immediately might be a threat worth pursuing.
Yeah, I'm always worried about the rook coming to b4 and attacking a4 and d4, so you have to be a little bit careful, but perhaps you can get away with it, especially in the current time situation. So now Lenderman's thinking he's the rook c1. And the reason I like rook c1 is, yes, you encourage king d7, and now a4 is never actually hanging because bishop c6 is a check that will hit the king and then the rook if it lands on a4. So now let's see, what is maybe a5, honestly, from white. The idea being if b takes a5, then rook c5, and it's very difficult, in fact, almost impossible for black to defend the a5 pawn, and the white rook is actually, making some progress there. So a5 is sort of your it's thematic. It's a principal endgame approach, creating an additional weakness for your opponent, and you're essentially eliminating your own weakness for the only weakness that white had was the pawn a4. So now,
he's allowing e5 because he's going to go to f5, and he's going to be giving up the f7 pawn for the d4 pawn. But Lenderman not interested in a transition like that. He's just going to keep protecting his center because, as Robert said, one of the big problems with the king and knight is it's just so much worse than the bishop. And that a4 pawn was untakeable due to moves like bishop to c6 check, everybody. So
here comes a5, right? Now a5 makes even more sense because the rook can go over to a6.
Yep.
So you're getting rid of your only weakness in the position and saying, okay, I'm going to create a weakness for my opponent, give him an isolated pawn that's going to be left over there, then eventually work my way around to try to make this e5 move. So this is a very instructive endgame by Lenderman
so far, yeah. No, I agree. And again, one of the things that's instructive about it is not just the X's and O's, if you're seeing the decisions he made, but again, the practical things we've been harping on since we came to the game. Knight takes d4 is a nice little trick here because you do have the fork at the end on c2. But white is still totally in the driver's seat, just moves like rook f6.
Yeah, 2-on-1.
2-on-1. You're going to win the f7 pawn. What I was about to say is before the excitement of the fork there, everybody, is just the practical pressure that Lenderman keeps by not changing the position when your opponent is getting himself under time pressure. But speaking of which, let's move over to the game. Lenderman is going to convert this one. But Bartel's game.
Bartel blundered. I wouldn't say blunder, but he made many inaccuracies and then got himself in trouble. And now he's in this end game where only white can win, and now the king comes to f5.
Yeah, he's going to win because h6 is going to fall. Although, okay, it's not just over yet, but it's going to be a tough one, yeah.
because the idea, everyone, is that white will keep trying to push this king, the black king, over to the queen side before attacking his opponent on g5. So you force the king over a couple files, then put your rook in a square.
So now he can check. The king's going to have to go to f8, or tickle is fine. But the point, everybody, is if this king is not prepared to come to the g7 square, then white can sacrifice on g5, and the king and pawn ending is winning. The one example of a not winning line I'll show you is if white just goes like this and takes on g5, everybody. This is an immediate draw because this is a position where black has opposition, and the king and pawn ending will end peacefully. So that's an instructive thing that Robert pointed out, that what white wants to do is play tickle to get this king in a bad enough spot where you can sacrifice on g5 and be winning the king and pawn ending. I don't know that I like the way he's done it so far. I think he's partly playing as fast as he is, Robert, because of Bartel's time pressure, which we're not really big fans of. I think he had the position right when the king was on g6, and there were chances to swing the rook to h7 and give checks and try to force the black king the other way.
We got to go back to the Lenderman game, though, because they both are like at 10 seconds, and it's now rook, bishop, and 2 against rook and knight. So while white should probably be winning here, it's very tricky, and there's only...
Never underestimate the knight. If Larry Christensen taught me two things, Robert, it was how to make a screwdriver and never underestimate the knight and bullet.
Well, the knights are super tricky because you often miss forks in time trouble. So here, go rook f1 check. And what black needs to do is sacrifice this knight for both pawns, and that way you're in a... Okay, that's...
Yeah, what's he worried about? He's keeping the bishop open, everybody, which stops this knight from coming into d5 and into e7 with check. Now the knight's going to come to d5? No, because there would have been a sacrifice on d5. And there is a sacrifice, winning on the spot. Rook takes d5, king takes e7, and he sees it.
And the problem is you can't go king e4 and keep the e8 square protected, otherwise... Yep.
He will do it. He's going to give the queen, but it's over. And
okay, so and Maxi Perez won as well. So Maxi Perez wins.
Okay,
and
but that helps the Krakens stay close, right? If we look at the scoreboard here, we've got a position where the Krakens still have a lead. Although now it's even with that Lenderman win. The scoreboard will be updated momentarily. So we're in for a thriller there between the Krakens and the Sopranos, at least into the final round. It hasn't been an easy match so far for Montclair.
Yeah, and I was going to say some of these Minnesota versus Montreal games are interesting, but the match is already over, so we should probably focus on the game's meaning for the match.
Right.
The match.
Yeah, obviously the Blizzard and the Chess Bras, we know that you have a lot of support in the chat, and thanks everybody who's watching us. I haven't thanked you in a while. But we're going to focus on the games taking place right now between the Bishops and the Pawnsgrabbers, starting with Fabiano versus Holy Shaba. There's an attack on the board.
Yeah, Fabi's still much better. There's a e6 pawn is a clear target. 2 bishops.
Yeah.
The king on a8 is not particularly happy.
This is almost the exact positional prophecy, right? We made that white would do work against the doubled e pawns, not allowing black to change the positional structure and be strapped with these weaknesses for the entire game. So, good work by Fabiano so far. What about the game where our everybody's least favorite free agent is taking on Awonder Liang? And again, that's not because we don't love Fedoseev as a over-the-board chess player. Again, you highlighted that he tied with Vishy Anand at the World Rapid and Blitz just not too long ago. But let this be a lesson about contracting free agents that are way out of their league in terms of time zone.
Yeah, it's really difficult to play when it's I was going to say something that I shouldn't say. So it's when it's way into the night and. It's already way past people's bedtime. So
not everybody plays better chess when Lionel Richie's All Night Long is playing in the background. I do. I know you do something well when that song's playing, but it's not chess. But yeah, no, this is tough. I mean, Fedoseev is not going to get a victory here, I don't think. Although this is not a position that he could exactly. I think only white can win this, right?
Although with the way Fedoseev's been playing, you never know.
But with the d6 pawn probably being the only real target here, everybody, white also has the a7 square for the rook, and okay, Awonder's going to do his thing with some cheapos over here, hoping that white plays f3 to guard e4. That was his hope. That would have led to bishop takes h3 for kicks and gigs. But
well, yeah, it doesn't really seem like much is happening here. Although, I mean, I still feel like
F5 isn't bad, by the way, because if you can open up lines as black and he plays it. Yeah, I was going to say I like this idea for Awonder because one of the biggest issues is that your bishop didn't have a way to get weaknesses, whereas this knight might eventually get to the d6 pawn. Now Awonder's maybe going to have some ideas of going after that c4 pawn, given that it's stuck on a light square. So I like this move f5.
Yeah, I didn't like the response. He took an f5 very quickly, but I thought maybe he could play knight f3 there.
Okay.
And the essential idea being that white's trying to go knight.
Exactly. If you take, you have knight h4, winning the pawn with check.
So,
well, as soon as we said Awonder was not in a position that he could really win this game, it looks like this position is going to become dynamic enough that maybe anybody can. Okay, board 3. Obviously, most of the big moments have been riding on a very little person in today's matchups. That, of course, is Little Peasants game. Alejandro Ramirez now taking on Atulya Shetty.
So even material in that game, but black is an outside pass pawn.
Yeah, but
white
f7.
Has pressure on f7 square.
Yeah, I like it.
So who is ahead in this one? Because you can't go rook
That's
takes
your job. I don't know who's ahead. That's your job.
Well, you can't go rook takes f7 now, which you want to do, because rook takes f7 blunders the rook on b5. Queen taking on f7 will get you into trouble because once the queens are exchanged, that pawn goes from a3 to a2, and quickly white is in very big trouble trying to stop that pawn. So you have to figure out a way to keep that pawn stopped in its tracks while trying to get the f7 square. So with that in mind, I think a move like either rook to b1 or rook to b6, maybe rook b6. And the point behind rook 5 to b6 is king g8 is not possible because rook takes g6 is hanging. The queen on a2 will be pinning the pawn on f7 to the king on g8 if it goes there. Mm-hmm. So rook 5 to b6 at least starts threatening the black king side, and that's more important than just the passed pawn. If white can initiate an attack, black's king will not be happy sitting on the h7 square. So
many sweet things just came out of your mouth. I have a hard time recapping it, but I'm going to start with just a real simple point that rook b6 removes the threat of the queen hitting the b5 rook on e8, and as Robert said, makes taking on f7 a real issue. And that's just a simple enough point that Shetty finally plays it, and you can whisper sweet nothings all day. I know we said we wouldn't take a look at the matchup, of course, between the Blizzard and the Chess Bras at this point. Rubbing salt in the wounds is not our intention, but Mr. Penguin GM did just win a very nice game against Jordan Van Forest, and so the Blizzard have extended their lead up 10-4. It's pretty ridiculous. So, all right, where are we going?
Where are we going? Should we stay in that match, or should we just keep moving on because it's over?
No. I think we stay on the St. Louis and the Pawnsgrabbers matchup, and I think that's where the action should be. We're looking at the Shetty game right now. We'll keep our eye on the Caruana and Shaba game, but Caruana's kind of doing work positionally. Shaba's getting grinded. The fourth board, everybody's favorite Forrest.
He's going down.
Who isn't Tom Hanks? Looks like he's actually in big trouble.
Yeah, Forrest Chen is not doing very well.
Let me find that game. Who's he playing this round again?
He's playing Want to Lose, but it seems like they should switch usernames because Safal Board does not want to lose, whereas it seems like Forrest Chen, despite some very, very good positions,
right,
he has not been doing so hot.
But again, this has been one of the most fun ones because Chen every game right now matters for the bishops as their top boards have struggled. Again, if you look at the stats there, we see that predicting anything but a tie for the Pawnsgrabbers on paper coming in based on the ratings and these performances would have been crazy. But in terms of the live situation, Pittsburgh is winning, and they should be favored to win the match. I think that's kind of an interesting point about our stats, that at this point they're 1.5 points away, and they're about to get a win here against Forrest Chen. So they're about to guarantee themselves a tie of the match if Bora can take care of business here.
Yeah, so we really have the two interesting matches as well with Montclair playing against the Krakens. and we have Miami and Webster. So we do have very close matches down here. And I think I'm scrolling to Joshua Colas versus Nicholas Rosenthal, your boy Rosensalsa, as you call him. And unfortunately, Danny, his position is absolutely terrible, at least so it seems. He's down 2 pawns with the white pieces, and he's dealing with a lot of pressure as well. So I think that's a huge win that's going to be for Webster. I don't feel like I'm going to jinx him. I think Joshua Colas has this one in the bag.
Well, moving over to that matchup, I've got that game that you said on the board here, and yeah, it looks like Rosenthal sacrificed the G-pawn for nothing and is currently got some problems.
Yep.
But this matchup is still really close. Okay, so here's one. Let's stay here. We haven't given this match enough love today. The champions have made this very close. Even if Colas takes care of business here against Rosenthal, the games that are really going to matter are the ones between the top boards. So let's see how Iturrizaga is holding up against Lequang Liang. Because
I don't know about that, Andy, because I was going to say Brian Tillis, board 3 for the champions, and one of the managers of the team, by the way. He is the white piece against Aaron Grabinski, and he's actually putting Grabinski into trouble here because Grabinski has a terrible king side. Tillis can make a move like G6 in his game, can play Rook F1 to attack F7. And I think that Brian Tillis may be the critical point that Miami needs.
And who is he playing?
He is playing Aaron Grabinski. So Shrilla versus Grabinski Spice.
Yeah, trying to bring up that game right now, and I will get it. Un momento, por favor.
Yeah, so it looks like actually now Tillis maybe made perhaps not the most accurate move with his move knight h5, but okay, that's potentially an attack in the making. So you have a different game up as well. That is the Lequang Liang versus Iturrizaga game, right?
I've actually got both games up. We can go wherever you want. The analysis board has the game between Shrilla and Grabinski, and then I've got the game between Lequang Liang and Iturrizaga on the main board, whatever you want.
Yeah, let's look at the Iturrizaga game because 2 very, very strong players. Iturrizaga is actually very well respected despite the fact that he's not over 2,700. A lot of these super grandmasters really respect his play as I've had conversations with them. And here with the black pieces, let's see. Black can go up a pawn with queen takes g5 and was just played. But the downside for black is that this bishop on b2 is a nice piece. Rook f5 in the future can be played. If I'm black, I'm just going f6 here probably and saying, you know what? If you want to take a pawn back on e5, go for it. In the meantime, I've consolidated. My queen will always just retreat to h6, and I'm not too worried about my setup. So queen e7 here or f6. I think queen e7 might even be superior just to keep the extra pawn on the board, play f6 next, and ask white, prove your compensation for the pawn that you've sacrificed. So I think just looking at the position here that it's Iturrizaga is the one to be preferred.
Yeah, I agree.
And wow, on the second board with Quesada as black against Tomas Banush, not only did that second board change cost Webster half a point, but I think Alex Shimanov, at least from what I've seen of Banush thus far, I've not seen much, but I think Shimanov is the better player because Banush with the white pieces seems like he's in quite a deal of trouble against Quesada because if you look at the position, Quesada is up a pawn, right? White is missing an a pawn, and look at these knights on a4 and c4, firmly entrenched thanks to the pawns on d5 and b5. And right now, how is white going to respond to the move d takes e4? The idea being if bishop takes e4 back, maybe black then goes a5, trying to eliminate the defense of the c5 pawn. And so it looks to me like black is just doing extremely well here. And I mean, I don't know what Webster was thinking with that lineup change. Maybe Shimanov was busy, but Banush is in trouble. Yeah, not looking pleasant for Webster.
Yeah, this is huge. I mean, Quesada and Iturrizaga seem to be the ship that Miami is gonna sail for the rest of the season, right? I mean, they're the main 2 local guys there, and they're gonna live and die by the performances of these 2 GMs on their top 2 boards. Quesada and Iturrizaga. So right now, if they can get big wins here, that's exactly what they planned on if you're Miami.
And Iturrizaga has proven to be a very worthwhile free agent. Unlike some of the other free agents we've seen and discussed, Iturrizaga is a free agent for Miami, but has been performing extremely well.
Okay, well, let's go to Shrilla's game versus Grabinski.
Okay.
What's going on there?
Shrilla and Grabinski. Wow. So something is happening on that G file. Something is also happening on the F file. But the white king is not exactly well sheltered either. So, I mean, doesn't black... So black can either go... I guess black kind of has to go queen e5 here. Queen g6 does not look like the right square for that queen, because knight f4 happens, and actually that queen might get trapped. So queen g6, knight f4, and then queen has to go back to f5, and then knight to d3.
Yeah,
so
this would be a big problem.
Yeah,
and a really nice little maneuver. You don't even need to take c5. You're going back to e5, and f7 is falling.
Yeah, the knight's powerful there. So the queen went to e5.
Right.
So the threat is now maybe rook to b2. So there's definitely ideas for black.
Well, the immediate thing that I look at, of course, it doesn't work, is rook takes f7, followed by g6, but that's neither here nor there. Queen f3 looks good.
Yeah, and does black have to go back to
c7?
F5?
I think you have to
c7.
go queen c7, but you suddenly see that there's all kinds of attacking chances here for white. I mean, there's tactics like the pieces coming into f6. Yeah, this would be a big win for Tillis, and like we said, I mean, or I said, that Miami would really be riding on the performances of Iturrizaga and Quesada, who've played every week, haven't they, for Miami?
Just about.
I think those two have played every week, but here, Tillis, who's one of the managers of the Miami champions, could end up being one of the heroes if he wins this game here, because this would be an upset and really help Miami.
Yeah, and the grandmasters that he's brought to his team, again, he's the manager, so he's the one who's bringing these strong players. They're trying to hold down the fort in the top two boards. So Tillis showing that not only is he a good recruiter, but he's also can play a bit of chess himself over the board. So
probably h4 makes sense here. Just defend and just sit tight a little bit, because I don't see a knockout. You can't take f7 without e4 falling with check, obviously. So
maybe h4, maybe
just
knight
sit
f4.
on the position.
Either h4 or knight f4. I'm not sure which one is superior, but I like bringing my knight back to f4 so I can go g6 next if still available.
Well, let's update everybody. The match that is g6. Before we leave, we got to see what the threat is there. g6. What's the follow up? I guess on f takes g6, he's just playing knight f4 and saying that g6 is a real nightmare to defend.
Yep.
That's a nice move.
And if you can't take on g6, that means you have to play f5, which is actually sort of typical.
Okay, and we'll keep the analysis board here focused on the Grabinski game, just to make sure people are aware. Fabiano Caruana did take care of Alexander Shabalov, but even with that win by Caruana, the Pawnsgrabbers are super close to winning that match. So let's go back to the game between Awonder and Fedoseev.
Wait, can we go to Forrest Chen first? Actually, I don't want to say anything because I'm going to jinx him.
Do you want to see it?
I do, because he was totally busted before, and now he's on the better side of this endgame. And Safal Bora only has 29 seconds. So Want to Lose is trying to lose after having an extra pawn in a rook and bishop versus rook and knight ending. Somehow his king got 3.
Wow. He was just up a pawn, and he was on his way. This would be a... No, okay, I thought he made himself. Oh, man. I need some coffee. I thought he made it his king on h3. Thank God I wasn't on camera for that one.
But look at this. He's just going to rook d2 check. The king has to move.
Just don't take a4, Forrest. Okay,
yes,
Forrest.
Then rook a2 now.
Rook a2 now. Then white can't guard both a4 and g3. And this could be the thing that saves St. Louis in this match here. Forrest Chen coming through with the shocker.
Alejandro Ramirez did lose to Attilio Shetty, which is why Pittsburgh is up 7-6
currently. Yeah, because The big game may still come down to Big Fish 1995 versus Red Nova. That, of course, being Fedoseev versus Liang. But
Yes.
let's not leave this one right just yet. I know Liang is under time pressure, everybody. If you want, and you're following this at Chess TV, just click on the buttons below the player and choose your poison if you want to go watch a different game. But I want to see if Chen really puts this away. He should just take on G3 with the king, and the game's over. What is he doing?
Yeah, what is he doing? Okay, just go Rook A4 and take that pawn.
Yeah, but you could have done it the move before. Okay, so he finally takes on G3. So let's...
Yeah, this is extremely hard not to win. So
right. Extremely hard not to win. Good description. Yep.
G3. Just go G3. There you go.
Okay, well, let's keep the analysis board here. I'm going to move the big board so that we have 2 games going at once. Okay. The National Master from St. Louis did get a huge win, the biggest win potentially of his Pro Chess League career so far, because it might save the Archbishops from losing this match.
Yep. Wait, who you... Okay, so that is a big win for Mr. Chen.
Yeah, but why is Pittsburgh up 8-6 right now? I feel like the scoreboard. Well, the scoreboard must just need to be updated.
Or it was 7-6, and then what's his name? Because Anatoly Shetty won,
right?
And then maybe now it's 8-7, which means that Fedoseev needs to win a position where he's not.
Fedoseev has to win this position, and he's not winning. So Pittsburgh is probably going to take this match anyway, despite Chen's huge victory there.
Wow, and just more disappointment from Fedoseev. The white. Okay, I know Awonder Liang is very strong, but having the white pieces, yeah. I mean, honestly, it's mainly on Alejandro Ramirez. He just needs to step it up. He's been playing terribly in the Pro Chess League. I wouldn't be surprised if he's several games under 500. Let's see. Going into this week, Alejandro was 5.5 out of 12, and now he has another bad performance. So,
right.
Hondi
has not brought his A game for St. Louis, and that's a big part of it. But still, Fedoseev has not been the super GM on board 1 that they're kind of paying him and expecting him to be at this point.
Yeah, and he's not even board 1 day; he's board 2.
Sorry, yes, on board 2. Yeah.
And we need to go over to the Lequang Liam Iturizaga game because that, of course,
I've got that on the analysis board right now, and I will move the main board there.
What a crazy game it is!
Yeah, this is going to be a fun finish. Iturizaga somehow gave up his blockade and didn't get a lot for it. I mean, now Liam has the queen on f6, and with it looks like an attack coming to the black king.
Although White's king is not particularly safe either, so if you take this bishop on d3...
Well, here comes queen f7 check, king h8. I'm going to take b7, maybe after a little pickle-tiggle, but first, eventually, you're going to get this position right here. Yeah.
And, once the queen can always go to e3 with check, and it's going to be a bit of a difficulty for White to get out of it. I don't see how White gets out of this checks as well, because you can never block with your rook because you pin your own rook and then rook f8.
I was just about to say, crazy idea. He plays queen e6 check and then rook to f7 and tries to go for a mating attack.
So rook f7 going for mate, but then the queen can always go to d4 with check, covering all the dark squares.
Right. Queen d4 check, king g2, and I have no immediate follow-up, but I am threatening queen e7.
Maybe bishop a6? Yeah, your queen e7 idea is looking pretty good, but actually you don't have a mate yet.
Yeah, there's no mate immediately, but that... Okay, he goes for it. I was just going to say, this is bananas, but Liam is going for the win.
And does he need to go for the win? That's the question, because Webster is up 6.5 to 6. But let's see what's going on. I guess I have to take into account the other boards, and it looks like Tomasz Banush is somehow not losing and is better now. I don't know what happened
against
in that game.
Quesada.
And wow, Brian Tillis is in fact just completely winning right now. He is.
Okay, well they're going to need that win by Tillis, because if Quesada, I don't know that Quesada isn't still. This is a crazy position here.
Yeah, both of these games are really nuts right now.
Anything could happen right now in this Miami windmill match. Okay, well, is Black going to break through with the knights hitting b4, or are the queen and 2 bishops going to do work here? We'll keep our eye on that. Shrilla is, in fact, right as I clicked on the board, Shrilla wins by resignation. That moves Miami to now leapfrog Webster up 7 to 6.5. So that means, again, it's coming down to these two games between the GMs.
Do we call it the Shrilla in Manila?
He performed like the Shrilla in Manila tonight. Okay, so we've got both the main board and the analysis board focused on the game between Banús and Quesada.
Right, because this match will end quicker, but the Montclair versus Buenos Aires match is tied 6-6, so it's going to be a fascinating finish.
Yeah, fascinating finish there. We got our eye on those games, but this match is going to end first. And Quesada, with only 24 seconds on the clock, is going to really have a problem not blundering here. This is how blunders are made. You got an open king in 24 seconds. That's a problem.
But the good news is that Quesada has the knights, which are super tricky in these.
Okay, what about Liam Lee and Iturrizaga? Let's take a look.
So what's going on here? So still no movement from Iturrizaga. He must be a bit nervous here because bishop a6. That's the only move that really saves that bishop, but you do have to be careful. It's queen e7. And my idea, Danny, was after queen e7 was to go king g8 for black, saying if you go rook takes h7 now, my g7 square is protected, so I can get away with rook f8, threatening bishop f1 check, for example, or queen f2 check, or rook f2 check.
I think that's a really strong idea, but he didn't see it. Instead, he played the move rook to g8. And I think that's a terrible move because white can take on b7, and I feel like I have all the 7th rank pressure I ever wanted, and I'm not down a piece anymore.
But I think the idea is to go queen d2 check and just throw the queen back to h3.
I didn't see you just had a perpetual on h6. Okay, so that's Black's idea. Black's bailing out with a draw, which is not the worst thing for Miami right now. By the way, the Pawnsgrabbers officially win, and it was exactly because Red Nova, meaning Awonder Liang, does hold the draw against the free agent from Russia. Really, really tough and shocking loss, frankly. I mean, today, our stats just absolutely took a beating, Robert. I mean, the Chess Bras and the Bishops were heavy favorites against the Blizzard and the Pawnsgrabbers on paper, and the underdogs did work. So, amazing stuff. Both the Blizzard and the Pawnsgrabbers keep winning. And by the way, these two teams have been two of the best teams all season. It's amazing how it doesn't matter what it says on paper. These teams are performing well this season, and they seem to have the magic working.
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota was 3-0 before the Super Saturday. Pittsburgh started 2-0, got half a point at Super Saturday, but just upset St. Louis. And St. Louis goes to 2-3.
Well, Iturrizaga is about to bail out with a draw here, everybody, and nothing Lequang Liam can do. And that's it. The game is drawn. That means we're going to focus on the game between Quesada. I'm surprised neither player is clicking draw. If they do, it'll just claim it because it's 3-move repetition. Indeed, they do. And we move on. Oh, wow. What has happened here? White's king is more open than before. You feel like the queen and knights are a hop away from mating the white king. But black only has 9 seconds. This is the match right here. It'll be 7.5, 7 after the scoreboard is updated, everybody, with the champions only needing I guess a draw in this game to clinch a tie, but if they win, it's over. Yeah, and the Shimonov substitution is going to come back to haunt them. And right now, look at these knights in g4 and e4, right? They dominate the bishop on d2. In fact, the bishop on d2 has no safe square, which means that if queen d7 is probably the only move to protect and was played, threatening the knight on g4, protecting the bishop on d2. That's a nice move right there. Queen d1 protects the knight on
f5 check. Whoa, I don't like that move. Because now knight
was queen f5 check just winning?
No, it's king g8. If you take my knight, I take your bishop.
Yeah.
And what is this? Take on g6.
He's gone on tilt.
He almost flagged. He had 0.9 seconds left when he made that move.
He's literally trying to flag him right now, and he might do it. And he flagged him. Oh my God! What a dirty dog!
Wow, that is not the way you want to go down because Miami had this match. They had it right
shenanigans.
Right now, knight g4. Bring your knight back to h6 is just probably just winning for black.
And anything is winning here for Miami. All they have to do all he has to do is make a move, right? Even queen takes d2 is better because okay, there's no perpetual, everybody. The black queen guards d8, so if check, the king hides. And if you trade queens, I think only black could win this ending. I guess I was assuming you could get to the b4 pawn in time, which I think you can. Knight b3, knight c1, knight a2. And black is winning in the end. I mean, he should have just moved instantly. Any move was winning for black. Okay, not any move, but yeah, any move was winning almost.
Yeah, you can't flag in that situation. You just got to make a move.
You just have to make a move. That was
even the board that's better than flagging. So unbelievable way to go down.
Webster wins. Webster will win the match by a half a point again because of the last minute substitution. They were spotting a half a point to the champions. So an absolutely improbable finish there with that flag. Heartbreaking loss there for the Miami champions.
Yeah, and I think we got to go to the final matchup that's still away. And not all four boards. So one of these games finished. It looks like Ehrenberg versus, who was Ehrenberg playing?
I thought you were about to say Ehrenberg, pardon me, sir.
Oh, wait, no, the game's still there. It just wasn't open for me for some reason.
I brought up the Lenderman game versus Pichot to start.
Okay, let's check.
Let's go there. Lenderman is better currently, and honestly, just up a clear exchange. I don't even see compensation for these two rooks.
Yeah, there's an exchange for one pawn, but that rook on c5 is dominant because the rook on a4 is stuck to the a file, protecting the pawn on a5. The bishop on b3 is excellent, right? It's tied down, protecting the c2 pawn. The c2 pawn protects it. It's attacking f7, but the knight on f3 is knight on e5. I was going to say knight f3 check to d4 or to d2 will immediately kick that bishop from its safe square on b3. So I think that it's very big trouble here. Knight c6 is a big threat, taking the pawn to a5. So Pichot is should lose this game actually quite simply.
Well, as we're looking at that game that I agree with you, Lenderman should win quite simply, I've already moved the analysis board to Pascal Charbonneau's game versus Maxi Perez. This is a big one, obviously. And
Maxi Perez has low-key been a kind of a hero for Buenos Aires. He's 2.5 out of 3 right now. He beat Ehrenberg, he drew Lenderman, and he beat Bartel from that absolutely abysmal position. So Maxi Perez is the player who's keeping Buenos Aires in it. And Ehrenberg has been the one struggling, on the other hand, for Montclair. He's 1 out of 3, which is not what they were looking for because he's just as high rated as the strongest Buenos Aires player. So right now, Pascal with the white pieces, he is up a pawn, but his f2 pawn is quite weak. And d3 is hanging right now. So
this is an obscode bishop position that's always tough. Everybody's got a target, but you can't do it. You can't do a lot about it with your other bishop. Rook takes d3. It's a good move. Perez is threatening not only f3, obviously, but also a move like maybe rook to c3 to dislodge the queen from blockading it. So this isn't looking great for Pascal. Down to 90 seconds on the clock, and worse to go with it.
Yeah, it's one of those end games that, if you go queen d5 here, trying to trade queens, even if black does trade queens, it's still annoying to defend because then the rook will go to d2, and he did play queen d5. If you just say you take, first you have to calculate bishop takes f2 there. That deserves calculation. But queen d5, bishop d5, rook d2 keeps white kind of tied down for the time being, and then the c pawn can start moving.
Yeah, this is not an easy position to draw, everybody, despite the obscode bishops and the reputation for it being a hard thing to win because of blockades. This is going to be a position where black is in control. Let's go to the game between Tom Bartel and, as I bring up his game against Jacques Bleit. What's going on here? Bartel has the white pieces. He's got an isolated pawn that he's trying to work on. But black doing fine. This move knight e4 means that probably he'll get a favorable exchange on c3. Black not as worse here as you would normally be with just a bad isolated pawn and not a lot of activity. Although I guess Bartel is probably the only one who can really win currently. Put the bishop on f3, try to gang up on the d5 pawn. This bishop is sort of just a big pawn defending his little brother on d5. So Bartel's doing okay here, and he's up a minute on time. This could be the game that the Sopranos need to win this match.
Yeah, from my perspective, honestly, I think it's a perfect strategy in a team event is playing against an IQP. And the reason why is that generally speaking, only white in this position facing this pawn d5 has
Right.
chances to really play for a win, and there's very little risk. So your teammates can rely on you. Okay, at least Tom Bartel is going to secure half a point.
Yeah.
And that way, we see how our games are going. And if we think that we're going to be down a game, then someone can play for a win, and it can be Bartel himself. So a very good strategy for a team event. And now this pawn d5 is looking very tasty after like bishop f3.
Well, if Bartel, so let's do the math here. Where are we at? So if Bartel is able to get this win, which is a bit of a stretch right now, that's really needed by the Sopranos at this point, because we don't expect Pascal Charbonneau moving again back to that one to hold this, do we? Maybe we do.
I think he has decent chances to hold.
Yeah.
And he's got better chances to hold than I would say Leandro Crisa has. Leandro Crisa, we haven't checked that game against Ehrenberg.
Yep.
Ehrenberg up a pawn as well in an opposite colored bishop ending. But that G pawn is quite passed. And the king on f5, well, you can already consider even going into e4 now, though that may make f7 particularly vulnerable. So it's kind of similar. These games, I would say they're equal, 1-1.
Yeah, it's amazing. No, this is by far the most close match of the day. Even in some ways closer than the Miami Windmills match. I thought Miami was going to win that match, and they just really can't catch a break right now. Poor Miami with a really, really crazy finish there. But this is anybody's. I mean, we have two obstacle bishop endings on the board. We've got a crazy game that's an IQP. This is anybody's match. Where's the fourth board here for the Pittsburgh?
That's
for the Sopranos versus the Krakens.
That is the Bleat versus Bartel.
Oh, right.
So both teams. Well, it's particularly Montclair is a 3 GM lineup and a kind of an underestimated IM.
Let's go back to board one. It looks like Lenderman is putting the pressure on Pichot big time. This will be the first win that the Sopranos need to really move away with things if they're going to in the last round here. Yeah, Lenderman looks to be just in total control here of the exchange and up on time. Play rook e7 maybe. Here, just play rook e7, guard the c7, guard the 7th rank, and free up this rook on d7 to infiltrate into the d2 square.
Yeah, and look at the time situation as well. Pichot only 16.6 seconds. So move don't go rook d2 because that runs into knight c4. That would be a pretty awful blunder. But and like you said, rook e7, knight a5, or knight d4. Plenty of options for black. And he went rook d8.
That's even more accurate. Really forces the rooks off the board, everybody, because rook c7 will be met by rook e7, and now the trade is forced. So Pichot just simply obliges, puts the bishop on d5, but this is a game that's only a matter of time. So we're going to chalk this one up to a win that the Sopranos need. That's going to put the score at 7-6.
And Danny, we got to go to the Pascal game. He has 7 seconds left.
Yeah,
and now
we're going.
He's quickly down a pawn in this endgame. He has plenty of activity, opposite colored bishops, but 7 seconds? Do you think he can hold this endgame down the c pawn?
With 7 seconds, probably not. That's the honest truth. I mean, at this point, Black is taking his time now debating whether or not he can just push the c-pawn or if he needs to remove himself from this discovered check on the h3c8 diagonal. But either way, this is going to be super hard for Black to hold. And we've already seen somebody be flagged ruthlessly in this last round.
And meanwhile, Ehrenberg down at under 20 seconds left, and he had an advantage before, but his advantage is, I think, almost entirely gone. That he's still up a pawn in this endgame. But I think, all of a sudden the white king is the one that's active and the black king was pushed back to the back rank. So, Ehrenberg just needs to make a draw because Lenderman did officially win his game. And so with that,
over. Lenderman won his game.
And that means Ehrenberg just needs to hold the draw because it looks like Bartel is Bartel's up 1 million pawns right now and is about to win.
Keep your eye on the analysis board, everybody. This is the view from Bartel's seat. He's just going to push those pawns to victory. That's his game against Yaquis Bleat. So with this win, the Sopranos will move to 8-6, and all they'll need is a draw. Again, Pascal may not be able to draw under time pressure, but Ehrenberg certainly needs to. Every time I say Ehrenberg, I'm about to say, pardon me, are you Aaron Burr, sir? I don't. It's just it's like a weird tongue tie.
Okay, I see your Hamilton affiliation there.
Yeah. Pardon me. Are you Aaron Berg, sir? Mr. Sergey Aaron Berg. All right, this is a nice little show of technique here, seriously, by Maxi Perez. This is exactly the kind of position you don't want, where your rook has been passively put in front of the passed pawn. I'm expecting Pascal to go down. Yeah, so everything rides right here, right now, on the game between Aaron Berg and Mr. Krisa. This is it. If Aaron Berg holds, Sopranos win.
And Aaron Berg is, he's still up a pawn, so he has to be just a little bit. Okay, rook h6 is now. Aaron Berg just make the draw. Just
very simple.
Play on. Actually, I would play on if I was black, right? Because every point matters in this league.
Every point matters in the long run, right? I mean, just from the tiebreaker perspective. But Krisa has held, and all Aaron Berg needs as black is a draw anyway. So a little bit of tickle, and our work here will be done, sir.
Danny, something very interesting as this ends, we could talk about the standings. The standings in the Atlantic, which we're covering, the Webster, they won because they got a very fortunate break against Miami. They were already the number one seed in the standings. Minnesota won. They were number 2. Pittsburgh won. They were number 3. And the Sopranos made up an incredible amount of ground because they win their match, and the teams ahead of them lost. Montreal lost. St. Louis lost. Miami lost. And Buenos Aires is now completely just like dead. They're dead in the water. I think that they're, if they somehow do not get relegated, that's a huge victory for them. And that's just fascinating to see in the standings that Montclair, with this survival here, they all of a sudden move into a tie with the Chess Bras and St. Louis for the 4th place. And that's the final playoff spot in the division.
Right.
So,
well, this game finally is drawn, and I will bring up exactly the standings that you've been talking about for everybody who doesn't know. Go to ProChessLeague.com to find out everything you need to know about your team or anybody else's team. But as we look at the standings in the Atlantic Division, Montclair winning this match, they are going to move into that neutral zone where they will not be relegated at this current time, right? And the Krakens are on pace to needing to requalify. One of the most exciting reasons for all of these teams to fight hard for the entire season is if you end your division in the red, that means that you are not guaranteed a slot in the 2019 Pro Chess League. You have got to requalify your way back into the league. So you can see who's holding down the bottom of each division, which means they are fighting as hard as they can against everybody who's currently in the neutral safe zone. So green obviously means you're, at this point, moving on into the playoffs. So, Robert, great stuff today by you, not me. So I appreciate that.
No, but don't be so hard on yourself. You were
as we take a look at the full matchup of Week 5, everybody, you see what happened in the Eastern Division earlier today. The Central, the Marseille Migraines just continue to just roll on, led by the one and only Frenchman with 3 names. And then we just saw an absolutely wild one, a shocker as far as the Blizzard and the Pawnsgrabbers pulling off huge upsets against the Chess Bras and the Bishops to go with it. Neither one of us predicted that. We were both backing up the stats that Chess.com predicted before this, that we thought both the Bishops and the Chess Bras would take care of business, but not so. The Windmills win in an absolute stunning fashion. Heartbreaking for Miami. They had no business losing that matchup there. A huge win by their manager, Brian Tillis, but unfortunately it wasn't enough with one of their top grandmasters getting flagged. And the Sopranos, they're apparently the Krakens are swimming with the fishes. That is a double reference that works. I'm retiring on that. See, everybody. There you go. The Krakens are swimming with the fishes because they got knocked off by the Sopranos. Come on. All right, are we ready to sign out of this thing? And you and I go,
Yeah, when we're talking about the Sopranos, you say that might mean something different than you're just leaving the set.
That's right. Well, either way, thanks to everybody who's been here. Don't go anywhere. International Master David Pruis and Grandmaster Ben Feingold will be here. They'll probably be a lot more entertaining than us, and they will, of course, have coverage of Hikaru Nakamura playing for the Seattle Sluggers, the biggest name of the day here as far as the American conferences are concerned. I guess Fabiano Caruana, a pretty big name too, but we'll see if Nakamura can avenge himself from last week and do work for the Seattle Sluggers.
Yeah, and we also have Mamedyarov playing as well. So 2 players in the top 10 in the world in that Pacific Division. No Yu Yang Yi this week. He got beat up a bit in Super Sunday, so maybe he's just taking this week off, trying to recuperate. But still, great division. It'll be fun action.
Shout out to all the fans. GJ Bad TT says it was a good joke, Danny. Stop repeating it. You're right. I just, when I don't get an immediate LOL from Robert, I'm like a little kid who's like waiting for mom and dad to acknowledge the story. Thanks to all of our subscribers in the Twitch TV channel. Thanks to all of our premium members and everybody who's here. Absolute Blasty McBlasterson. And we are getting set to start the Pacific Division momentarily. This is your last... Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, when you don't get an immediate reaction from me, I actually just had a conversation the other day with a couple friends about how I'm sometimes a little too hard to impress that makes my friends a little bit uneasy. They were telling me that. Yeah. And so I felt that right there when you made a great joke and I didn't give you the love that you deserved. We were talking about comedy shows and how I generally don't laugh as much as other people. So I got to work on that. I'm going to work on myself for you.
I don't know that that's a bad thing. You don't need to be anybody but you. Okay. You don't need to perform for me.
I know you hate Gavin DeGraw, so don't make me go into it.
It's my issue that I need acknowledgement. My parents were divorced when I was 6 weeks old. It's a long story, okay?
We're getting into this right now?
We're not reliving it right now, but we're having a real conversation, and David and Ben aren't ready yet, apparently. So,
okay, well,
San Diego coming in hot. Apparently, GJ Bad TT says he's been watching chess all day. So, I'm happy about that. That's up to you, okay? Again, I encourage it, but that's up to you. Shout out to Josie Wales, who owes me sweeping him off the board in a bullet match very soon. National Master, can we do it? Not even sure what that means. I'm just checking in on the chat. Shout out to everybody who's been with us.
And Ben Feingold's been all over that chat, so he's going to be up doing the commentary shortly. And,
Ben likes himself a good chat room.
Yeah. So and look at that, Danny. Was it Jib at T whatever? Yeah. Just therapy with Robert and Danny.
Therapy with Robert and Danny. Danny takes a seat on the couch and we talk things through.
Apparently, another note on Twitter from the Pawnsgrabbers says,
well, they did win, and again, let's give that match some love while you and I sit here and wait for the Pacific to start. To remind everybody, the pre-match odds had St. Louis favored at around 80%. Again, this is based on the ratings and the results that we would expect running a simulation of the match a million times. This were the pre-match odds. You see that the Bishops were expected to win. That's a light way to put it. This is what happened. The Pawnsgrabbers dominated. And obviously I will give them the love they deserve. And go check out what they're tweeting at me right now. They deserve all ridiculing. They can make fun of me as much as they want. Let me go see. What do we got here? Let me do a little refresh of the old Twitter. I'll try to avoid whatever hate's coming in. I don't like to show all the tweets that come my way because a lot of those aren't PG. But look at that. No, great image. And Shabba Dabba Ding Dong played just good enough. Little Peasant played just bad enough. And Fedoseev needs to take a nap at about 3 p.m. from now on. He needs to hit the pillow. He needs to catch some Z's so he's got a little more energy down the stretch. And I know we joke because that's what we do, but I'm serious. It seems right now that Fedoseev is clearly not playing up to his potential, Robert, and it has to have something to do with the time zone.
I totally believe you, and I think that that's going to come to play a big issue for St. Louis, especially when the candidates begin, right? Let's say that St. Louis qualifies for the playoffs. The candidates begin. That means all those top guns, Fabiano Caruana, can't play in the Pro Chess League. And that means Fedoseev will go up to board 1. And how he's been on board 2, not exactly helping the team. And so it's very worrisome indeed.
I just gave a like. I don't know what they call it on social media. Is it a favorite or a like or a heart? It's like make up your mind. What is going on here? But anyway, gave them a retweet. They deserve it. The Pittsburgh Pawnsgrabbers do exactly what they need to do. All right, it looks like David Pruess and Ben Feingold are just about ready. Don't go anywhere, or this is your chance. Walk away, get a snack, get some coffee, get some tea. You don't got anything else to do. You're going to stay here and watch the show. I'm checking out the chat.
I'm trying to chat, and my messages keep getting deleted, and I'm not even cursing or anything. So,
well, thanks to all the subscribers, all of our premium members, all members who are here watching it. You guys make this possible. Everything that is the Pro Chess League because of our fans here, because of the viewers. So thanks for being here. Yeah, we got Checkmates64 sharing some links in the chat where you can actually watch some of the in-person or some of the first-person accounts. A lot of our Pro Chess League teams have their own Twitch channels, and they are streaming. Sometimes first-person accounts, somebody who's playing is streaming their thoughts. Sometimes it's one of their own commentators. So of course, you can bounce around and check out who you want. Pick your flavor, as they say.
They're telling you, Hassan Trick says, Danny, don't get a haircut. So they like your hair. That's what the commentary is on right now. Yeah,
I appreciate that.
I need to get a haircut. That's what I'm trying to type.
You see,
but
when you're balding, the key is to keep growing out long enough hair that you can cut it and then eventually get hair implants, and nobody knew that the hairstyle was all artificial. Tom Brady taught me that.
Oh, boy. Tom Brady also tell you how to fumble? What? Did I say that out loud?
I think I'm about to mute the Diamond member who's spamming the chat. Make good jokes, not bad puns. You go take a second and think about what you just said, because I muted you. There you go.
Danny,
LOL.
We're getting a lot of loves for our commentating duo and saying that people love it right here.
Well, that's cool. It's not that I don't mute people for giving negative feedback. I literally get hated on for a living. If you haven't seen Reddit lately, that's my job, is to be hated on. I muted you, Diamond member, because you were spamming the chat with all caps instead of just saying, I don't like Danny Rensch. For that, I say join the club. If you spam the chat, I'm going to mute you every time. Hashtag you're welcome. Ruthless Danny, that's right. Ruthless Danny, muting people again. All right,
I don't know
who we got? What?
What
do we got?
I'm muted somehow in the Twitch chat. I'm trying to type. It keeps telling me I can't talk for another 488 seconds.
Good for you. Maybe you need to think about what you said for 488 seconds. I support Chess Bay or whoever muted you.
I have no idea who muted me, but I'm not happy. I'm really upset about it. Nobody puts Bobby in the corner.
Well, nobody puts Bobby in the corner, although I have put Baby in the corner a few times. I'm not the only one who misses you, Bobby. Hikaru Nakamura is about to throw down in the Pro Chess League. If you are here, don't go anywhere. Our boy Hikaru is about to show you what the magic is all about. Robert, give Hikaru a kiss. Give him a kiss.
No,
give him a kiss.
No, I'm turning the other way. Turning my cheek.
Give him a kiss.
No.
Give me a kiss. Hikaru Nakamura, I predict it goes 4-0 tonight for the Seattle Sluggers.
I also predict a 4-0 performance.
I predict a 4-0. All right. Am I going to sit here with Hikaru Nakamura's fathead for the rest of the show, or are David Pruess and Ben Feingold going to get their bleep together? Proverbial bleep.
Their bleats? Their Jacques bleats?
Everybody lean into your home camera right now and give Hikaru a kiss. He deserves it.
Ubitsa one says, I will kiss Hickey. That's their new nickname for Hikaru.
Kiss Hickey. No, is that what he said, or he said he wants to give him a Hickey? Because that'd be inappropriate. No, this is one of the truly just authentically happy Hikaru faces. This is Hikaru face number 6, in case you don't know. Clearly.
Yep.
Clearly. Anyway, people are like, what is going on here? What happened to chess commentary? Bring back the boring old Russians. Put this guy in a cellar.
What do I want for dinner? Do I want Thai food? I gotta eat.
Okay, good. Milky Way 2018 in the Chess TV chat gave him a kiss. Cheesy puns are better than good jokes. That's from a username called Cheesy Puns, so he's clearly a biased source. Red Thunder Heart, once again, being a cheerleader for Chess.com. I don't even know who Red Thunderheart is, but he's got a big heart, and he likes to beat those drums. Hikaru's lips taste like burnt shrimp sauce.
What?
Somebody said in the chat.
This chat is problematic.
This chat is, but no, I do predict a 4-0 victory by Hikaru Nakamura tonight. I predict the Seattle Sluggers win because of his performance. I predict we'll get one more subscriber before we leave, and then I'll do the robot and we'll sign off. Give us a subscriber on Twitch. Give us some love. Give us some shout out. Chess Bay, stop with all the caps. I agree with Chess Bay. Do what you're told, everybody.
Ooh, someone just told me to have green curry and tom yum soup.
So my wife, Shauna, dude, has been making her own curries now at home. Oh my God! Next time you come out,
oh, I can't wait.
She makes a green curry, a red curry. It's phenomenal. It's so good. Like seriously, her curry is the best curry I've ever had. I know what you're thinking. That's ridiculous, Dean. I've been to Good Thai Rush. It's so good, dude. Shauna's been experimenting. I love Zip.
I'm about it, so I'm definitely happy to try some good old.
Oh, apparently they're ready, and they're like, "Hey, Danny, stop talking about curry." Okay, cool. Well, I love everybody who's here. I appreciate you, and have a great time with International Master David Pruis and Ben Feigold. I'm gonna mute another Diamond member before I go because people think we don't. Diamond, paying member or whatever, no matter who you are, treat chat with respect, subscriber or not. Shout out to the final sub. They did it for me before we go, so we can drop the mic. Toast1078, I love you, babe. Again, non-sleazy car salesman way. Robert, virtual hug, bro. We out. Peace.
Peace, buddy.